Okay, I'd like to call the Budget Committee to order, please. Can we have the roll call?
Budget member Savick. Commissioner Dotterer.
Here.
Commissioner Roberts.
Here.
Budget member Stevenson.
Here.
Commissioner Dyer.
Here.
Chair Morris.
Here. Couple of housekeeping items before we get started. You have a couple of handouts that have been distributed to you. One is the handout from our public comment on Tuesday, and she had indicated that she left some materials, and you have that in front of you. And the second is an email that was received by Kathleen, I think, looks like on Tuesday evening. So those are there for you to look through and hopefully to read sometime this morning. At the end of our agenda, we'll go into deliberations. And as I've usually done, I will poll each one of you individually to see if there are items that you want to put on the agenda for deliberation. And we'll make a quick agenda on that, get started. Okay, so first department up this morning is Roads and Parks.
Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it.
Morning, Steve.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I'm Steve Lambert, Roads and Parks Director. Always appreciate the opportunity to come to this committee and present the good work that our teams have done out in roads and parks over the year and what we have planned for next year. So hopefully you see some of the work we're doing. As you know, the Roads and Parks Department is comprised of 5 distinct programs. Administration is there to support our team, while Fleet Services manages and maintains the equipment that we use to do our work. The engineering team delivers our capital program, while the road maintenance team manages and maintains the hundreds of miles of roads under our jurisdiction. Parks provides fun for our county residents and tourists coming to our area, and one of the largest county parks programs in the state. Over the course of the last year, our department undertook a strategic planning effort to identify our goals and objectives. We're really excited about this effort and put a lot of work into it. With potential challenges on the horizon, we sought alignment through this effort across our team and across all divisions. You can see on the slide here, the 4 strategic goals emphasize the need to maintain trust with our internal and external partners, promote innovation in our efforts to find new ways of doing old work, ensure that we're nimble and able to adapt to changing business conditions, and as always, focused on delivering high quality service to the public. One rarely ever stops to think about the amount of roads our team manages. With over 900 miles of county roads, over 17,000 individual traffic signs, it's a lot of traffic signs, and a few hundred bridges on our roads, our team of just over 88 has a lot on their plates. Our team of 15 in parks manages and maintains over 20 developed parks, 900 plus campsites, and 14 boat ramps on area lakes and rivers. This picture here is the installation of the gangway up at the Howard Prairie Resort Marina last year. We took that. Many may not know, but we provide more campsites than any other county parks program in the state of Oregon. None of this could be done without the hard work and dedication of our team members. I love this picture. I had it in last year's presentation, and we'll throw it in this year's as well to show the folks that make up the Roads and Parks Department. I'm constantly reminded on a daily basis of their efforts to deliver high quality customer service to our citizens. The proposed budget maintains current staffing levels, same as we have this current fiscal year, no additions or cuts. The total parks program budget is approximately $7 million, largely consistent with the current year's proposed budget, much change from the current fiscal year. The program is super excited to see some recovery of some of the lakes in the southern portion of the county, with Howard Prairie predicted to start this year a little bit higher in water levels than it did last year. And as such, we're planning for revenues to be slightly higher due to increased use. As our region continues to cope with the effects of a long-standing drought, we are seeing a lot of dead, dying trees in our parks across from Cantrell Buckley and the Applegate up to Howard Prairie, and we're planning for associated expenses to mitigate those hazards for those dying trees. State revenue sharing, which largely includes RV registration fees, makes up about 15% of our parks revenues. As you can see, user fees make up the majority of revenues, and I always like to remind the citizens that every penny generated in our parks goes right back into park operations administration in the parks program. The parks fund balance remains strong, allowing the program to be able to adapt to changing business conditions that are placed upon us, such as low lake levels and the summer smoke impacts, which we're experiencing seems to be more and more every year. The program continues to be aggressive in seeking grants, with the majority of those grants going towards capital projects. So how are these revenues used? The majority go directly into maintenance and operations of our parks, either through maintenance services, operational expenses such as utilities, or labor. Although inflation has eased in some areas, costs continue to rise in others, as we all know. No surprise there. With the strategic goal of remaining nimble, labor continues to comprise a large but not majority share of our expenses, and we rely largely on summer extra help employees to deliver our services in our busy season. Roughly 15% will be headed towards capital projects this year, mainly focused on pavement maintenance projects, and 17% of expenses are budgeted as reserves for future cash flow and emergency needs. Let's talk about a few projects that were funded, or not funded, but completed this year. Well, both funded and completed this year. Main docks at Howard Prairie Resort Marina were replaced approximately a year ago, as you know. Additional funding was secured from the Bureau of Reclamation this year, which allowed for the installation of the finger floats now, which I'm happy to say are estimated to be complete by Memorial Day. They should be arriving here within the next week and a half. Boaters will see the immediate benefits of this new marina this year, because water levels are predicted to be at a point where the marina will be floating for the majority of the year, but the old marina will be high and dry, so it'll be very visible. And we are including funds to remove the old marina later this summer. Crews were busy at the Emigrant Lake Park, beginning the renovation of the Oak Slope Campground project starting in January of this year as well. This project is funded through a Bureau of Reclamation and Oregon State Parks grant, and includes the replacement of an old, inaccessible restroom and installation of new campsite amenities, including the addition of a handful of ADA compliant campsites. Long-lasting, durable materials, you can see here concrete building, concrete picnic tables, will reduce maintenance costs in future years. The proposed budget includes funds to complete the project in late summer. The final phase of the stair replacement project at Emigrant Lake was completed recently as well, with the installation of new concrete steps that serve one of the areas, the park's 4 picnic shelters. This 4-year project replaced all failing stairs in the park, and those stairs posed a pretty significant liability to the county, but we're glad to see them replaced. After being on the deferred maintenance list for many years, the roof on the Howard Prairie Resort Lodge building finally was replaced during the current fiscal year as well. Contractors removed layers of the existing roof, which was over 40 years old, and replaced rotten decking boards that were underneath that roofing, and this roof should last for several decades. In the proposed budget, the capital improvements list for parks consists largely of pavement maintenance projects. These are at Emigrant Lake and Howard Prairie. As part of the Emigrant Lake Oak Slope project, the campground roads within that tent campground will get all overlaid this later this year, as well as all the campground roads and parking lots at the Howard Prairie Resort. This is nearly about $1 million of investment in pavement in our parks, largely funded through grants. Goals along the Bear Creek Greenway will remain similar as last year and the current year, with an emphasis on maintaining and managing invasive species, primarily Himalayan blackberry. Fuel reduction efforts in the footprint of the Alameda fire will continue, with the current project underway between Ashland and Phoenix, set to wrap up later this summer, hopefully. This particular project is funded through a $500,000 grant from the Oregon State Fire Marshal, which we're super thankful for, and we're partnering with the cities of Talent and Phoenix in this effort. Moving on to the roads side of the house, the 24-25 budget totals nearly $48 million. Of that, approximately $8.5 million is allocated towards capital needs, either directly on our roadways or for capital equipment purchases. With fewer miles being driven in our post-pandemic world and more fuel-efficient vehicles on the road, we are preparing for a decrease in gas tax revenues, which will impact our capital program as we move forward, which we'll discuss here shortly. The graph before you shows one area of concern for me, which is that 83% of our revenues in the road fund come from the state highway fund. While this fund is comprised of a few different revenue types, it's largely funded by gas tax revenues or fuel sales. Unfortunately, the lack of diversification in our revenues makes our dependence on fuel sales a key factor moving forward, as they are projected to decline in future years. This, coupled with a decrease in federal assistance, has led to the development of a conservative budget as we wait to see what the legislature does in the 25 or possibly 27 legislative session to address statewide transportation funding needs. In the proposed budget, we're including $20 million of state highway fund revenues based off of ODOT projections. You will notice, as compared to the current year, this is a slight increase with the last 2% gas tax increase for fuel tax sale. The fuel tax being implemented in January of this year as part of House Bill 2017, which was passed several years ago. Unfortunately, the fuel tax increases as a result of House Bill 2017, which many of us thought were a long-term solution to transportation funding issues, simply just don't have the buying power that I think at the time the bill was passed, we all thought that they would. Since passage, construction costs have risen 80%, equipment 25%, and traffic paint, which we buy a lot of, has risen on average statewide 30%. So costs on all fronts have risen. Looking forward, we likely will not be budgeting for an increase in the state highway fund revenues in future years, as you can see how quickly fuel sales are projected to decline. Fuel sales took a sharp drop during COVID. You can see that downward spike, rebounded to just shy of pre-COVID amounts, but are pretty volatile right now. And this is the latest projection from ODOT. Given the scenario laid out before you, we're budgeting our expenses conservatively. Permanent labor remains consistent with the current fiscal year. We'll continue to rely largely on extra help employees for summer flagging needs. Operational costs such as gasoline and diesel remain highly volatile, and we continue to see very steep increases in construction costs as well as our capital equipment purchases. We are budgeting 34% in the road fund as reserves for future cash flow and emergency needs. Let's get into pavement maintenance. It's beautiful weather right now for asphalt. You can smell asphalt in the morning. That's what road guys love. With over $600 million in paved roads across the county, we continue to put a large emphasis on maintaining our paved surfaces. As part of this effort, we're continuing to plan this year our chip seal program and set to chip seal 60 miles of 60 miles of roads in 2025. Due to our conservative approach and planning for the future, we did opt to defer our Pave a Gravel Road program this year. That was the program where we took some select gravel roads and chip sealed those. That really doesn't result in a tangible service level drop for our customers because they're already living on a gravel road, but it does save us $250,000 per year that can be used for other purposes right now. For our higher traffic volume roads such as Crater Lake Highway or Antelope Road, where chip seals just really aren't the appropriate maintenance strategy, we will be overlaying them in 2025. Time for my favorite graph. I promised you last year I'd include it this year, and I'm doing that again. This graph shows that the more you invest in preventative maintenance on paved roads, the longer you extend the life of pavement or the road itself. I've shared this in past presentations. It also shows that it's cheaper to keep roads in good condition rather than rebuild them after they begin to fail. For this reason, as budgets tighten up, we continue to focus on maintaining our good paved surfaces through the use of chip seals. This year, with the help of our third-party evaluator, we developed a 3-year pavement maintenance schedule, giving us a strategic approach to selecting our roads in need of chip seals based on sound data. Additionally, other road maintenance activities such as drainage maintenance, brushing, and all the other things we do on our roads are being planned around this annual chip seal program to really make sure that all roads are subject to a whole road approach to maintenance. This strategy simplifies a complicated process, creates efficiencies in us for our planning from the work planning perspective, and ensures that important maintenance tasks associated with road maintenance just simply aren't missed. But as we know, chip seals aren't for every road. Roads such as Antelope Road in White City experience heavy truck traffic and a lot of turning motions by those heavy truck traffics into commercial access points. On hot summer days, as trucks turn, they frequently can peel that chip seal layer off of the road itself. And as such, a better approach on these types of roads is to simply lay down new asphalt. As such, Antelope Road will be ground and inlaid from Pacific Avenue to just west of Highway 62 this next year. As part of this project, we are required to bring all ADA ramps on Antelope Road up to current code, and we plan to begin that project later this summer. The same approach will be used on our portion of Crater Lake Highway. This is between the ODOT and Medford sections as you approach North Medford, kind of into the Eagle Point area. In a cost savings effort, the travel lanes only will be ground and inlaid on this section of road. The shoulder and center turn lanes were recently crack sealed, and they should last for several more years. They just simply don't receive the same wear and tear from that level of traffic as the travel lanes do. As you know, our pavement condition is measured regularly by a third-party evaluator to ensure that we're using the proper strategy in our maintenance efforts. One of our department performance measures tracks pavement condition. The pavement condition is a standardized measure that is used widely across the country by a lot of different jurisdictions. As of April, our pavement scores at 79 out of 100. This is 1 point down from where we sat this time last year, but we're not terribly concerned with that because it does tend to fluctuate a little bit throughout the year. This score, however, means that our roads are collectively in good condition, the highest quality of category. For this reason, and the reasons previously shared, it is in our interest to keep them there by continuing to fund our pavement maintenance programs. In my opinion, frankly, this should be one of our top priorities in the budgeting process. According to a report on the future of our pavement based on differing funding scenarios, our contractor, aka our third-party pavement evaluator, found that even with continuing to fund our pavement maintenance program at current funding levels, our pavement condition will drop slightly over the next 3 years to 78, 1 point down from where it sits today. However, if during tight budget times, we chose to drop our pavement maintenance funding by, let's say, 30%, our pavement condition would drop at a more noticeable trend line and our deferred maintenance would grow more rapidly. As I showed you previously, when pavement declines, it declines quickly. We want to avoid a steep trend line on this front at all costs. I share these graphs with you really to highlight the efforts that we've been putting in at the department level to find the right balance of funding our pavement maintenance program as we move into possible, future challenging times in relation to the other work that we do. The data shows that we need to continue to adequately fund our pavement maintenance program and resist the urge to reduce funding when the going gets tough. Switching gears to our capital program, you can see here that we budgeted for the replacement of several key capital equipment pieces this year. One of our graders on the bottom left, which is important in gravel road maintenance and also snow removal, is set to be replaced this year at nearly $500,000 just itself. Additionally, we strive to replace 1 dump truck per year, which puts our fleet of dump trucks on about a 20-year cycle, and we're planning on replacing one of those this year as well. Along with the truck and grader, we're planning on replacing a boom truck that we use for hazard tree removal and brushing, and as well as a water truck and a crack seal machine, which frankly is one of the more important pieces of equipment in our pavement maintenance program. Bottom right-hand corner is the photos on the screen is the boom truck for brushing, and on the top is that crack seal machine. In our cautious budgeting approach, the capital construction program will see some impacts. Some projects will continue, some will be amended, and others will be delayed. However, through this, the Foothill Road Corridor project remains our top priority. Due to funding concerns, the construction portion of Phase 2 will be delayed, but design and right-of-way purchasing will continue, along with replacement of 3 culverts on Corey Road. Grant funds are positioning us well for the replacement of 2 bridges on Swingle Road and Lampman Road, and design will continue on Wilson Road. Like I did in Parks, just show you a couple projects that were completed this year by our roads team that made a big impact. So these 2 projects that I'll show you were completed during the current fiscal year and provide a large benefits to the traveling public. They both occurred on East Evans Creek Road and were completed to address serious safety concerns. Widening, guardrail installation, and a change in the road's geometry combined to create a safer experience through drivers through the curves on Martin's Corner. This area had a higher than normal crash rate, resulting in nearly $1 million of state safety fund grants being received by the county to put towards this specific project. At the Minthorn Road intersection on the same road, one that had a high rate of rear-end collisions, a turn lane, as you see here, was added along with widened paved shoulders. Both projects will result in a much safer section of road for the traveling public and were designed, I like to throw kudos out, designed and inspected by our in-house engineering team. As we've discussed in previous years, the completion of the Foothill Road Corridor Improvement Project is key to our region's preparation for a major earthquake, as it will serve as a detour to Interstate 5 should the viaduct fail. However, even before we have an earthquake, the project is much needed improvement as the East Medford region really just continues to grow at a pretty rapid pace. Traffic in this part of the valley is increasing, and the existing narrow, winding road, frankly, will struggle to safely serve the needs of the traveling public in the future. Phase 1 construction of this project began in 2023 and is proceeding very well. As you can see here, the road has been widened to include 7-foot paved shoulders, and curves have been not eliminated, but tamed through engineering to enhance safety as you travel through them. Contractors are expected to begin construction after taking the winter off again in June, as they work to replace a large culvert on the northern end of this project and then continue just a short distance further to the north where the project ends at Dry Creek Road. The project is expected to be complete in the fall. While Phase 2 was previously scheduled to begin construction in 2025, the project has been pushed to 2026 at the earliest due to funding concerns. As estimates continue to rise, now at nearly $11 million just for construction alone, that is more than probably 3 times what it was estimated at about 5 or 6 years ago. It's just simply, from our perspective, is not feasible to commit to such a large expense during uncertain funding times in the transportation world. If the legislature takes action on a transportation package in the 2025 session, that places us in a more sustainable position. We are more than happy to reevaluate that schedule. In the meantime, design and right-of-way acquisition for the project will continue so that when time comes and funding allows, we are ready to move on to construction. While we wait to proceed with construction of Phase 2, we will be replacing a few culverts along the same road just south of Corey Road. These large culverts will be lengthened to enable the widening of this portion of the road in the future. This is an important point that I just kind of want to call out. But as you can see, while we've delayed the $11 million construction portion of this phase of the project, we are continuing to move forward with nearly $2 million of pre-construction elements of this project to set this high priority project up for success when funding allows. So we're not taking a whole bite of the apple this year and delivering the full project, but we're eating that apple a little slowly, if you will. Moving on to Wilson Road, design and right-of-way acquisition will continue on this project as well. This project will widen Wilson Road between Table Rock Road and Upton Road. Frankly, since the traffic signal was installed at the intersection of Table Rock and Wilson, traffic on Wilson has just increased to the point that we need to do some road improvements on that particular road. Once complete, the road will have 7-foot wide paved shoulders, much like you saw in the pictures of the current phase of Foothill Road and East Evans Creek Road that create a little bit safer experience for the public, a little bit more forgiving road if you intend to veer off the fog line. Construction on this project does remain several years out, but we're proceeding with engineering. Moving on to bridges, a few slides left. As we've seen recently in our national news, bridges serve an essential role in our transportation network, and maintenance of them is key. As such, we prioritize bridge maintenance right up there with pavement maintenance. Grant funds were received for the replacement of 2 bridges on Swingle and Lampman Roads, as I mentioned earlier. As the theme of what we're seeing lately, the engineering costs on both of these projects have come in much higher than ODOT budgeted and predicted, and we expect construction costs to follow suit. As such, we will be seeking most likely additional funds through the local bridge program to help cover some of those increased construction costs, but we are proceeding with design of both of these bridges this current year, and there's no delays in this project. These are important projects for us. All in all, the more than 300 bridges in our county remain, and our county road system remain in great shape. 96% of them meet federal standards, and the other 4% that don't are still safe to drive on. They may just have load limits for some of the heavier truck traffic that crosses over them. In summary, our department is currently in a sound position due to responsible budgeting over the past years and prioritizing the work that we deliver. We focus, you've heard me use this word a lot this year, we focus on being nimble so that we can adapt to changing business conditions that are placed upon us, and we seek efficiencies in the work that we do. As we find ourselves in uncertain times, at least for the transportation funding world, we focus on conservative budgeting to ensure sustainable spending, and we're cautious of what the future brings. This caution shapes our priorities as we move forward. We achieve our goals by using and implementing sound business practices, but mainly we're successful at what we do because of the work and dedication of our team. The Roads and Parks team is comprised of dedicated, hardworking individuals who take pride in serving our community and with passion and with diligence. We are here as stewards to ensure that the infrastructure, whether it be parks or whether it be roads, remains usable for future generations to come. Thank you, and I welcome any questions.
Yeah, Steve, I'll lead with a couple of questions. It's on the highway fund. So I get it, the highway fund is funded by gas tax. Do the gas taxes that are collected at the point of sale in Jackson County stay in Jackson County, or do they go into some big pot in Salem and then get redistributed in some other methodology? And if so, what is that?
Exactly the second option of the two. So they get collected, they get collected by ODOT, and then they go into a big fund that distributes them by a funding split. So 50% to ODOT, 30% to counties, and 20% to cities.
And how does our share get calculated? And what's the basis for that calculation?
It's based off of, I'd have to go back and look exactly how that funding scenario plays out, Chair, but it's based off of, I believe, population, registered vehicles in your county, et cetera.
I see.
Yeah.
So it's a relatively complicated formula.
It is,
Yeah.
and
Not surprised.
but we hope that that formula doesn't change too terribly much because it's been in place for many, many years and it's worked very well. As conversations begin on transportation funding changes, we're always a little skeptical that, some other type of jurisdiction might look at potentially getting a bigger share of the pie. I think we're all interested in growing the pie so that we all have bigger shares and not one entity having bigger share than the others.
Right. And my second question in the same theme, my wife has an electric vehicle, and when she does her vehicle registration renewal, there's a surcharge on that for the fact that she doesn't buy gas and pay gas tax. Does that surcharge end up in the highway fund as well, or go someplace else?
And you're asking some technical questions today.
Sorry.
It's okay. I'm not exactly sure. Those were changes, I'll just be frank with you, those were changes that were passed in recent legislative sessions, and I'm not sure how that money makes its way into the state highway fund and how that gets allocated to the counties. Those are all conversations that are being had right now on the electric vehicle end of things, and how we can continue to fund transportation moving forward, whether it's a road usage charge based off of miles that you drive or other taxes appropriated with electricity.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Questions? Steve?
So, Steve, you kind of painted a concerning picture with the PCI and the potential levels of investment and what that looks like as far as pavement condition, but more importantly, how it starts to build this deferred maintenance that obviously when you get to a certain point in deferred maintenance becomes insurmountable. What strategies do you have to ensure that the investment in that particular area is adequate to not get to that point where we incur a deferred maintenance balance that again becomes nearly insurmountable?
Yeah, the strategy that we have largely is through the most efficient means of protecting our roads, which is our chip seal program. The point that I was trying to make in sharing that information, Commissioner, was that as we start looking at, allocating money across all of the different, priorities that we have, rather than build capital improvement projects, they're going to take maintenance in the future. We feel that it's better to save that money, use that money on maintenance so that it doesn't build our deferred maintenance list going forward. So chip seal program, we're not cutting it. We want to keep that going moving forward. We want to keep investing in our pavement. That's going to take some, as a result, that's going to take some cuts on the capital improvement end of things. But we've had a long history of prioritizing maintenance to keep our PCI up.
Really made that point with me.
Go ahead.
No, I agree. And I'm wondering, I think this is more of a comment than a question. I'm wondering at what point does it make sense to look for our alternative revenue sources if the state doesn't make changes to avoid those massive deferred costs that would come in the future. And if I'm understanding this right, no general funds go into road maintenance, correct? I mean, and so I don't know at what point that has to shift in our mindset, and I'm not suggesting this year at all, but we certainly want to avoid what you're talking about there, Rick, of massive deferred maintenance.
Well, and I would just add, committee member, that this is an issue that every jurisdiction in the state of Oregon is having. You've heard comments from ODOT. They're having it at the statewide level. ODOT's having major funding concerns right now with the way, just combination of inflation and the way, I mentioned with fuel-efficient vehicles and hybrid vehicles. So the legislature is going to have to take action. They're going to have to take action very soon, or every county, city, and the state agencies will be facing.
Have you seen any trends in other jurisdictions of efforts that are alternative to what we're talking about here?
No, not in relation to the current situation over this current year. I think folks are just actively engaged in working with the legislature and their county commissioners on what potentially could happen in upcoming sessions.
Yeah,
And Matt, in answer to your question, what I'm seeing at the city council meetings is their streets fees. They're increasing their fees dramatically because they have that funding mechanism to do that. Could you talk a little bit about system development charges and where that fits into this?
Yeah, we're not actually budgeting any system development charges transfers this year. So our system development charge program can only be used for capacity increasing projects. This year, we're in a building mode for our system development charges. We're still accruing them in regards to development within the community on the road side of the house, and we'll be putting those towards some of these projects as grant match or whatnot that move in future years, Commissioner. But they have to be used on capacity increasing. They cannot be used on just regular maintenance.
Other questions?
I was just going to add a couple of things. So for those of you who've been here a while, you may remember that when the last major road funding package passed through the legislature, we had decided to focus a portion of those increased funds on new capital improvements. Namely, we have I don't even remember, but over 700 miles of gravel road out there.
Of gravel road?
Yeah, gravel.
A couple hundred.
Couple hundred.
700 paved.
700 paved, I'm sorry. So we're going to back off of things like that. So we feel, and we've talked about this, that we can maintain what we have. We're trying to build a lot of new stuff. And that's been what we've practiced, going back to the loss of ONC revenue. And I know that people probably get tired of me saying this, but the road fund lost 30% of their funding with the loss of ONC revenue. And we lost 20% of general fund funding overnight. So for us, in the general fund, that's $33 million a year today, as I said in my budget message, but they lost 30% of their funding overnight. So ever since I've been here, we've had this same practice. And I do want to, since you asked about system development charges, I just want to say this, I don't know the line item number off the top of my head, but it was between $300,000 and $400,000, I think, in system development charges. We have among the lowest system development charges in the county. So our system development charges are about maybe 50% of what Medford charges. And we technically, Steve says they're for capacity building issues, but we don't actually build capacity just with SDC. We typically use that as a match to grants we can fund to build projects because it's such a small amount of money in the grand scheme of their budget. So I just wanted to clarify that too.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay, thanks, Steve.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Next up, Board of Commissioners, Shannon, morning.
Good morning. Your clicker. Thank you.
All right.
right. Well, good morning, members of the board, Budget Committee, Mr. Chair. My name is Shannon Bell. I'm Senior Deputy County Administrator. I'm going to present the Board of Commissioners budget this morning. So the Board of Commissioners has a relatively flat year-over-year growth from last year's adopted budget to this year's recommended budget. Their revenue obviously equals their expenses, the majority of the expenses being in personnel. The revenue is primarily chargebacks to other departments, with a small amount being from the video lottery fund. So if we go year over year, like I said, their revenue is increasing by about 7.3%. It's majority due to a 7.5% increase in personnel. The majority of this increase is due to the reclassification of support staff in between the 2023 proposed budget or adopted budget and this year's recommended budget. So those staff were reclassified at a higher level. They're also receiving step increases this year, which is the majority of that personnel charge, along with the COLA for all employees. Materials and services went up just about 5%, and that's primarily due to increased costs we're seeing everywhere. I think you're going to hear that story all day long. FTEs stayed the same at 5.5, which is 3 commissioners and 2.5 support staff. So a little bit about the Board of Commissioners. They are authorized by the Home Rule Charter. They have 3 branches: the executive branch, which is responsible for county budget, enter into agreements, and sell any county-owned property that might come up. Quasi-judicial for land use hearings. They oversee some of those. Legislative, responsible for policy and direction, and the codified ordinances of the county. So some of the accomplishments for the prior year, they supported the continued operation of the Wildfire Resiliency Permit Center that Ted spoke about yesterday, which facilitated expedited plan review and permit issuance for fire-affected properties in the unincorporated area of the county to assist the rebuilding stages of the recovery from the Alameda and South Obanchain fires. And then under a previously declared local state of emergency related to the unlawful cannabis activities and other matters in Jackson County, requests were made by both the Oregon governor and the Oregon legislature to provide support to Oregon Water Resource Department, local law enforcement, and local code enforcement to address illegal cannabis-related activities in Jackson County. And the Board of Commissioners were appointed to county, state, and federal committees, and they report back on those committees on a regular basis in our public meetings. Their continued work on maintaining the Oregon and California Railroad lands, the ONC, one of our favorite things to talk about, funding for Jackson County and ongoing forest management, and as well established priorities for future county expenditures. So the department objectives for fiscal year 24-25, there's a lot of them. So continue to lobby and advocate for full wildfire suppression policies and resources. Continue with the wildfires and smoke campaigns, providing public awareness, support, and engagement for Jackson County citizens. Continue exploring solutions to public safety and jail capacity issues. Continue to address the illegal cannabis-related activities occurring in Jackson County. Continue to identify and address areas to help restore our regional economic vitality and assist business and industry efforts to rebound from the detrimental effects experienced as a result of the COVID pandemic. Develop, adopt, and maintain the budget for Jackson County and develop long-term funding alternatives. Continue to accept responsibility of the oversight for the general well-being and public safety of Jackson County. Enhance and protect agricultural interests and lifestyles in Jackson County. Continue to work with local, state, and federal partners to find solutions for homeless issues and mitigate the adverse impacts on county communities. Support commercial and industrial opportunities in White City and the county in general as part of the county's Economic Action Initiative. Explore solutions to natural resource issues. Address economic needs in managing forests in Jackson County. Promote continued growth for Jackson County to include efficient transportation, jobs, and development. Encourage the growth of more small companies that offer family wage jobs in Jackson County. Continue to support the Fairgrounds Expo Park towards a secure financial base. Provide leadership in economic development issues. Seek more public input. Continue to work toward the approval of the urban growth boundary expansion requests following acknowledgement of regional problem solving. Maintain general opposition to actions that impede access to public lands by citizens, including but not limited to the closure of roads and trails on these lands. And continue to work on implementation and review of the land development ordinance. And that's it. Questions?
Anybody have any questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
Seems to be a lot of general misunderstanding right now related in the community related to proposed ballot measures. Can you speak to what would occur from a staffing perspective, specifically on the support side and other expenses that may come if those ballot measures were to pass?
Right. So right now, the commissioners are supported by 2.5 staff. If the ballot measure would pass to add 2 additional commissioners, it would likely require an additional staff to be able to support their needs.
Yeah. Can I ask Danny a question first? So Danny, is there more to that than adding the salary costs of 2 more commissioners? And we have to add offices, and will the budget committee expand? I mean, will the lay members expand to 5? Does the state require there to be an equal number of community members on the budget committee as there are commissioners?
Yeah, I take your questions to be the request just for factual information.
Absolutely.
So as you're aware, there are ballot measures that are up for vote, so the county staff aren't able to either provide support or opposition of those. So taken frankly, just to answer your questions, yes, we believe there would be more office space required. We've proposed 2 alternatives for that. Remember off the top of my head, I think it's somewhere between $350,000 and $450,000 to remodel and add the appropriate space. There's also lots of other overhead costs. So new people need computers, and they'll need vehicles, and they'll need someone to cut their paycheck, and someone to do their I-9s, and someone to do their, W-2s, and all of the stuff that costs money. So that all gets costed out. We do also anticipate, 2 more people means additional travel and training and all of that kind of stuff. So everything that you would see in someone else's budget that would be a per person cost, we would anticipate. There's a range of possibilities with salary. The ballot measures propose a $75,000 salary cap. That proposal conflicts with state law. So we anticipate that we'll have to go over to the court and ask for clarification. There are multiple cases where this has been addressed, 2 specifically in Josephine County, the last one where the court upheld that state law prevails. So, we have anticipated the possibility of the salary cap being in place, which I believe is somewhere around a $200,000 increase with those things in annual operating costs and those things I just described. If there's not a salary cap, or it's challenged in the court, bases their ruling on the most recent case in Josephine County, it's not precedent setting because it wasn't done at the Court of Appeals, it was done in the county, but it's very persuasive for an argument in our county as well. So if the salary cap doesn't hold, then we anticipate it being quite a bit more expensive, $500,000 to $700,000 a year in additional operating costs. So the total cost in the first year, depending on what happens with the salary cap, if all 3 measures were to pass, is pushing near $1 million. And then after that, if the salary cap is effective, we're probably talking to around $200,000. If it's not effective, as I said, we're talking $500,000 to $700,000. So I did put together a budget forecast, essentially a draft budget forecast. Of course, some people can argue whether they agree with me or not, and ultimately it'll be the budget committee that makes the decision on approving those or not. Mm-hmm. But those are, and this is off the top of my head, there's actually written documentation that supports what I'm telling you here generally. So I'm hoping I'm not missing anything, but hopefully that answered all of your questions.
Right. If we did add 2 new commissioners, when would that take effect, in what budget year?
I think it's January of 27. Does anybody else know? I think it's January of 27.
27.
Yeah. So it would be the 26, 27 fiscal year.
So we'd have plenty of
We would
time
have to budget
prepare for it.
for the July of 26 budget year, which
Right.
will start in November of 25. So we would actually have to start budgeting
Yes.
fairly soon.
Right, okay. Matt, thank you for asking that question. I was going to ask it, and I'm glad you did.
Annie, one question he asked you didn't answer. If there were 5 commissioners, would there be 5 of us lay board members?
Yes.
Okay, so 10 people would be sitting here today.
Better budget for a bigger, no, I'm just,
Well, I did anticipate, a cost for that. My proposal was somewhat miscued by people who wanted to critique it, that we would necessarily have to add more space up here. We may have to add more space, but my budget for preparing for that, I think, was about $30,000 in cost for this room. That's primarily for the electronics, so it wasn't actually for adding space. It was for the cameras that are, when people watch, it's for the recording equipment, it's so that people could still participate on Zoom and everybody would be able to see everyone. It's for the microphones, it's for the speakers. And I think, $30,000 is a reasonable cost for that, but I think people critiqued it as if we were going to have to remodel the room. It may require some remodeling, but we may also be able to reconfigure the seating and fit that many people up here, so. But I did anticipate a cost for that. A lot of people also don't understand that there's an added cost for other areas that the Board of Commissioners are responsible to. I think a lot of stuff got overlooked when, it was kind of declared there would be no additional cost for this. For example, we have, 3 other local governments that the Board of Commissioners run and participate in that also would require an expansion of those members and accommodating for that. So we have the White City Enhanced Law Enforcement District, we have the 4-H Master Gardener Extension Service District, all of which would have expanded capacity based on having an equal number of lay members as we do. Commissioners, we also have the White City Lighting District. So there are additional costs. Some of those additional costs would actually get, which I didn't even cover or propose when I talked about I said there would be other costs that I'm not including. Those would be costed somewhat out to those districts, right? Because those districts stand alone, but it does include the commissioners and the additional lay members for those.
Thank you. Colleen, I put you off, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, because this wasn't involving that, but I appreciate Shannon doing the overview of the Board of Commissioners presentation. And I just wanted to add that I really appreciate the Rhodes summary that they are nimble, conservative, and cautious, because I thought, well, what's our summary? And I think we're nimble, conservative, but motivated. And I think when I consider our involvement, and mine, I guess I'll speak to mine, because not being involved in the Association of Oregon Counties, we are so much more involved at the state level in all kinds of the legislative efforts there, that we were it was a lesser effort when we kind of were involved through a backdoor through AOC, where we have meetings twice a week in our meetings. What's the bill? What action do we want to take? And we meet, and it's more effort on our staff as well, but it's more effort on our part. How can we be involved? And many times we were ahead of AOC on many of the bills, and it's exciting and motivating to be there in that place that we took as a board. And then we're involved. I love our involvement with the cities. I just think it's our efforts with the cities are very effective. And when I see just last night, our little cities, Butte Falls, Shady Cove, and Gold Hill got their funding restored by our governor, and we got to take an active role in that as well by writing a letter of support because of our involvement and our relationships with our cities as a board, and that is exciting. And then we have the third level. We're involved at the federal government level, and we're involved with the National Association of Counties, and I have a of involvement with the Public Lands Committee, and in July, I'll be taking our resolution back about our public lands and our fire policy. And that has been successful and so exciting and such a privilege to do as a commissioner. And it's very motivating. And I just wanted to share that. And we're supported by our staff and as a board as a whole. And it is very nimble. So anyway, just thank you. I just wanted to add that for my part of the report.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Time for the county clerk. Morning, Chris.
Good morning. I decided to bring some color.
You always do.
Always. Not sunshine, but we're definitely bright today. So thank you all. Honorable members of the Budget Committee, County Commissioners, Administrator, and the public we proudly serve. The County Clerk's Office is anticipating revenue in the amount of $1,757,235 and expending $2,615,306 during the 2024-25 budget year on behalf of the Clerk's Administrative, Elections, Recording, and BOPTA, soon to be known as PVAB, Property Values Appeals Board. Anyway, that's the programs that we have within our department. The majority of the clerk's revenues are obtained through recording fees, marriage licensing, document sales, and special elections reimbursements. Those would be non-primary or general elections. Now, there is a slight difference. We're expending more than we're bringing in this year. Danny will probably go more into that about what's happening, and I will mention that as well. But we have a project that was approved in the last fiscal year that we just got the contracts completed for. So we did not see the full expense in this fiscal year to start that historic indexing project, and I will talk about that a little bit upcoming. So for 2023-24, we successfully conducted a less than countywide election in November 2023. We are currently preparing for the May 2024 presidential primary election, and costs will be paid to the county clerk's budget, including all federal, state, county, municipal, and PCP, better known as political party volunteers or precinct committee person candidates. Jackson County currently has 163,756 registered voters as of 4/17 of 24. I do anticipate that number to go up as more voters, qualified voters, decide to participate moving forward to the presidential actual general election in November. But just for the record, that is the highest number of registered voters we've ever had in Jackson County. The Board of Property Tax Appeals held hearings or process stipulations for 45 petitions during the 2023-24 session, and we just ended that a couple weeks ago. Property recordings in Jackson County have continued to decrease from 2022-23, where we were at 29,352 recorded property records and miscellaneous records, to a current estimate, which is lower than I originally anticipated, of around 25,000 for this fiscal year. This is due large part due to the inflation we're seeing around the country, and mortgage interest rates specifically that have reduced the amount of mortgage originations and property sales. Even though there's a high need for housing and property, people just aren't selling or refinancing, taking out home equity loans, and or selling and purchasing new properties. But I remain optimistic that hopefully in this next fiscal, we'll see a change in that, although it may not be as soon as we anticipated due to items happening at the federal level. We had 2 full-time equivalents that were laid off in fiscal 22-23 due to workload, reduction in workload. And I will continue to collaborate and work with our county audit staff, of which I'm a huge proponent of that department and what they do to assist us in management of our departments. They provide great resources to us, as well as, too, they've been helping us during our elections because we need to backfill some of those positions, and it's been great to have our audit staff work alongside us with that. And again, we will review workload versus staffing to verify our staffing is at appropriate levels at all times. The United States Postal Service modernization based on the Delivering for America Act will see changes in postal delivery expectations. We are planning on dropping our ballots a day early at the bulk mailing unit this year for the upcoming May election, as well as November, anticipating just to allow for accommodations to some of those changes. We don't have any outcomes yet because this will be the first election based on that Delivering for America Act that they're implementing here in the state of Oregon and several other states during this year. Of course, we always have concerns, but I am positive we will work because we have a great working relationship with our business partners at the USPS, and we'll continue an open dialogue about our concerns and try to pass on some of those things to you all as well as we have outcomes from May. Supply chain issues, believe it or not, we're still experiencing supply chain issues, and as well as increasing costs, paper costs, regarding ballots, educational informational inserts, and envelopes that it takes to conduct an election. And those will continue across the country for years to come. Secured, here's a couple of things we did do in the elections office during this fiscal year. We secured the front public-facing part of our office. We provided a barrier between our staff and the public side because we're always, and in this day and age, concerned with the safety and security of our staff and the public as well. We added a new security system in the elections office on the second floor and panic buttons within there to provide security improvements to election workers and, again, the public in general. We will continue to find solutions to provide safe and secure environment for the elections and, of course, looking at our recording staff as well in the future. And then we were really happy we were able to hire a new FTE in March of '24 due to a vacancy we had in January of 2024 in our elections office. The training is absolute. It takes time. In fact, after 29 years working in the county clerk's programs, you learn something new every single day. So it is just a process. There is no college education that can teach you how to administer elections. You have to learn on the job, but we're confident that our new hire will be able to meet that challenge, and we're excited to have her on board. 24-25. So the 24-25 budget will include a presidential general election. I wasn't sure if you were aware of that, but presidential election year in November of '24, and a special districts election in May of 2025. Those are both countywide elections. The general election, our budget will pay for, but the special districts election will be fully billable back to those districts that choose to participate in that election, as well as for the candidates that are a normal part of a special districts election. We may have potentially 2 other regular scheduled election dates because the state lists March and August as potential election dates as well. But we don't see a lot of elections during those times because if a district chooses to come on, usually they have to front that entire bill for that election costs themselves rather than coming on with other jurisdictions, which the costs are apportioned based on the billing worksheets that we have provided through the state. And, of course, there's always potential for recall elections, which those are conducted according to the Constitution of Oregon. So we'll continue and finalize a back indexing project, as I spoke of, with our revenues and expenditures. And these are historic property records dating back from 1853 to 1982. providing a remote digital access to the citizens of Jackson County, and to further provide efficient and timely access to public property records. About 75% of this project expenditures will be paid for in the 24-25 fiscal year, and we do anticipate that to wrap up that back indexing in the next fiscal year as well. It just took some time to get the contractual obligations taken care of. Continued increases in voter registration, and I spoke to this earlier as well. We will process and maintain voter registration data for an estimated 165,000 Jackson County voters. And of course, that number is more accurate coming toward the November general election. So again, ongoing monitoring of revenues and expenditures in both programs, or all three programs, admin, recording, and elections, as well as workload versus staffing requirements. We normally backfill our elections office during big elections with some of our recording staff, but because we do not have redundancy in those, we're not going to be able to do that this year, which is what I mentioned, though we do have some great people that come from other departments that come in and help to assist us in elections, and we will continue to do that, as well as our ever-valued temporary election workers that we hire each and every election. And those are just members of the public that we vet, of course, but that come in, and we couldn't do elections without them coming in and helping us. Jackson County, of course, was the first county to utilize e-recording services, and all 36 Oregon counties participate in doing so. E-recording in Jackson County is now at approximately 75 to 80% of all documents being recorded electronically, and we're really proud of that program. Again, one of the legislative changes, and it was a bill brought up by the Oregon Association of County Clerks, was changing the BOPTA program, which we're famous for acronyms in elections in the world, but that was the Board of Property Tax Appeals, which we felt was very deceiving to the public we serve, because we have a lot of petitioners that come in and say, well, my taxes are higher than my neighbor, or my taxes are just high in general. Well, really, when you come to a BOPTA hearing, which will now be known as PVAB, Property Values Appeals Board, you're appealing values, not taxes. So as county clerks, we felt it was irresponsible to have it as Board of Property Tax Appeals, and we'll have to make all of the proper changes in the marketing and the forms, of course, and let people know that it's actually value appeal, not tax appeals. So, of course, one of the big ones upcoming for 24-25, it'll be later in the year, after January, after we've certified a November general election, and, of course, the ongoing audits and recounts that happen for that. We are testing the functionality and go live with the new Oregon Centralized Voter Registration and Election Management Tool, which they now have a name for that. It's called Orvis, and that will be completely upgraded. It's a brand new program to us, and they've been working for a couple years trying to get that program to where it's functional. The original plan was to roll that out in this current fiscal, but when it got so late in the game toward the later part of 23, our county clerks were really concerned that we had a project that we weren't hugely confident in and that we weren't trained in, so the state decided to hold back on rolling that out so that we had confidence in the system we're using to be able to conduct elections. So that will be upcoming, though, and I anticipate 25. Of course, myself and my elections program manager, we sit on our legislative committees to the Oregon Association of County Clerks. And really important, we keep those roles. So we give Jackson County a voice in those processes. Again, supply chain issues. We were given notice by a recent vendor business partner that they anticipate, because of paper mill closures, that those costs will go up between 7 and 10% in oncoming fiscal years. So we have to be prepared for that, because ballots cost money, and so our costs are going to continue to go up as well. And Shannon spoke to that about costs increasing. And then, of course, we're always continue to work on both cyber and physical security issues concerning elections and moving into the presidential election year. Those are things that are always in our minds and the top of the list about providing a safe, secure environment for our voters. So service to our citizens is our priority in the county clerks programs. We are humbled to serve in this capacity. So my sincere gratitude is given to the entire clerk's office staff, our temporary workers that we utilize in both elections and recording, and for the continued support of all our colleagues in every county department. Thank you for your time, and I will gladly take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Questions? Yeah?
I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment that I want to commend Chris in her office is what is becoming a more and more challenging area of our local government, and you handle it extremely well. You handle it with professionalism. I know it can be frustrating, not to mention the reduction in your revenue and how that affects your department. I just want to commend you for continuing to do a great job, an incredible job for Jackson County residents, and to support what we do as well in a, like I say, in an increasingly more and more challenging environment. So thank you.
Thank you. We always say, no matter what comes at us, we're going to get the job done. So, and we're really proud of that. So thank you for your support.
Yeah.
You want
Other
to?
questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have the assessor. Morning, Dave.
Morning. Good morning, Budget Committee members and County Administrator, and for the public that might be viewing in. The Assessor's Department overview is the Assessor's Office is a state-mandated program that assesses all residential, commercial, business, personal property, and industrial improvements. Except for manufacturing plants that are over $1 million and the utility companies in Jackson County for the purpose of property taxation. Large manufacturing plants and the utility companies are appraised by the Oregon Department of Revenue. The manufacturing plants that mainly in this county are a large timber product producing manufacturing companies. And the utility companies in this county would be railroad lines, airlines, telephone, fiber optics. And when the state appraises them, they set a statewide value and then allocate out a piece of that value to all the counties, depending on formulas that they've worked out. And they send us those values, and we simply put them on the tax roll. And if the taxpayer has an issue with those values, an appeal and make an appeal to tax court, then the Oregon Department of Revenue defends those values. The Assessor's Department, just general information. This is what keeps us busy. We have approximately 88,000 real property, that would be residential and business property, 1,000 utility accounts, again, those are state appraised, 8,000 personal manufactured structures, and about 5,500 business personal property accounts. Not all of those 5,500 generate taxes, though, for the county because there's a statutory threshold that if their value doesn't reach a certain amount, I think it's somewhere around 21,000. If they have a value of real market value 21,000 or less, they don't get a tax bill. They're exempted, not exempted, but they're it's like an exemption. They just don't get a bill. And that amount, that threshold amount, is CPI'd. It's indexed. I think it started out, I don't know, maybe 10 years back at about 12,000, and it's creeped up every year. And so we lose the smaller mostly mom and pop businesses. Every year we lose a few more of them because all the values there is in their machinery and equipment, and that tends to lose value. It depreciates, so their values tend to drop, and they don't do a lot of replacement items. So we lose a few of those every year. We have a total then of about 102,500 accounts that we send tax statements out to. Every year, when the roll gets certified, in other words, we stop the presses, and at a certain moment in time, we total up all the value in the county, and what that value is the official value for that moment in time. We call that certifying the values, certifying the tax roll, and at that point, the assessor's office turns all of those values over to the taxation department, and bills are sent out based on those values. Now those values, those are official values, it's certified roll, but it changes constantly as we do tax roll corrections, and we change those official values, and that can happen for the next 5 years after a tax roll is certified. All those numbers can be appealed by taxpayers and lowered. They can be, we can find omitted property and add that to the tax roll. We had a total that we calculate the total taxes and break it down into these these 5 categories. The office generated property tax revenue for real property of $343,626,443. Personal property generated a revenue of $7,685,298. Manufactured structures, $3,192,061. Utilities, $14,453,866 for a grand total of $368,957,669. Now, as those are collected, it gets allocated out to this various taxing districts. And I've given you 8 samples of examples of those taxing districts and how much of that pot of revenue that will be allocated to them. The Rogue River Rural Fire District will receive $1,547,167. Rogue Valley Transportation District, $3,370,040. City of Central Point, $6,992,907. Eagle Point School District, $13,593,234. City of Ashland, $13,926,967. Medford School District, $46,853,303. City of Medford, $48,229,722. And Jackson County, $51,259,465. All that is accomplished with FTE of 36.5 positions, allocated out to 2 of those positions for administration, 21 for real property valuation. We have 3 cartographers, those are the people that draw our maps, and 10.5 clerical and special program staffing members. As you can see on the history of full-time employees, we dropped down for a little while and kind of leveled out around 33. And then last year, the Budget Committee was kind enough to grant another 3 FTEs, which brings us up to the 36.5 FTE. The appraisal program is briefly described here as generally most appraisers and office specialists are busy January through August working on adding all new construction to the tax roll, and a small team of office assistants or specialists now are processing business personal property returns. A small team of appraisers work throughout the year doing studies comparing our tax roll values to actual property sales prices. The results of these studies are reported annually to the Oregon Department of Revenue for review. These studies are statistical analysis of how well we're doing our job. They can measure the sales price against the tax roll value, and in one case, if we're 10% high, and in another case, we're 10% low. Statistically, it's measured out to find out how far, on average, we're off from where the actual values happen. And if we're off 10%, even though on some we might be low, some might be high, but if we're averaging 10% low, then we take all, if that sampling of sales tells us that, then we believe that the whole population, all of our accounts would experience the same trend. It makes sense statistically. We have a really good sample size of sales. So then we use that trend to and apply that to all of the accounts before the tax bill goes out. And in theory, that brings them all up to where they should be statistically. And that keeps us at what the state calls 100% of real market value. In 2000, I want to take a minute and talk about the inventory review program. Annually, the assessor's office strategically targets certain areas of the county for a review of our property records. The appraisers will go door to door and visit with property owners or renters and verify the accuracy of our records. This program kicks into gear after the appraisers finish adding new construction to the tax roll. This is normally done October through December. In 2002, Department of Revenue sent a team of specialists down, and they went through our office policies and procedures, and had a big focus on on us hitting what the 100% of real market value, and we were hitting 100% of real market value, but we weren't using the preferred method or procedure that they would have us do, and obviously they believe that their preferred procedure would also hit 100% of real market value, but not just 100% of real market value overall, but maybe do a better job specifically on each individual property. So we to change to that procedure required some software rewriting. The software we used was built, and we joined it somewhere around 2002. Up until then, you couldn't just go down to Best Buy and buy an appraisal program. A couple of counties, ours one of a couple of counties, we had in-office staff who took programming, and we developed an in-office software, and we used that for a while, and then we co-joined with 3 other counties, Deschutes, Polk County, and one other, And we all decided, instead of having our own programmers writing our own software, let's put all of the talent together, create one software that the 4 of us use, and then maybe we'll get more counties to use that software. Right now, of the 36 counties, there's about 3 software programs that handle those 36 counties. The one we use handles about 20 of those counties. In other words, the other 20 counties are using the same software. But out of all of those counties, I think when we started that in 2000, our program was set up to do what's called accumulated trending. And the other counties weren't doing accumulated trending, and the Department of Revenue felt it was hard for them to compare what we were doing with other counties if we weren't using the same procedure. So this review, because of this review that the Department of Revenue did, it was the catalyst that made us forced us to deal with our software company and get the software rewritten to where we can create our values without the accumulated trending. And we're through that program. The majority of the work is behind us. We got another year or so before all of the county is on that process. We have a mapping department. Our mapping department, we call those our cartographers. And when property changes hands, I buy a piece of property, I sell a piece of property. That transfer of ownership is on a deed. The deed gets recorded at the clerk's office, and then we get copies of those, and we change our records to show who the new owners are. If there's partitions and subdivisions that realign the borders on tax lots, those new lots get created, and there could be lots that are combined, and we have street vacations and annexations and taxing district boundaries changes once in a while. And all of that keeps our mappers, our cartographers busy all year long. The majority of the funding, the revenue that comes into my office is through the general fund, but we do collect outside revenues. The Oregon State offers a grant, we call it CAFFA, C-A-F-F-A, County Assessment Functional Funding Assistance. The money that goes into that pot comes from recording fees and a percentage of the interest collected on delinquent property taxes. And the state has a big pot where all this is funneled into that pot, and then the state allocates that back out to the counties based on formula. Yeah. And you'll see that grant when I get to the revenue section. Also, our budget recognizes revenue from personal property late file penalties. We send out, like the IRS sends out expects taxpayers to file on April 15th every year and declare their income. In Oregon, business owners are required to file a form every year also. And if they miss the deadline, the March 15th deadline, there's a 5% penalty. If they also, there's a deadline, a second one that they can aim for, and if they miss that one, the penalty goes up to 25%, and then there's an August 1st deadline. And if they miss that, the penalty goes up 50%. So if they were to miss that, and if we calculated their tax bill to be $100, 50% or another 50 would get added to the 100, so their total bill would be 150. On the next page is the source of the assessor's funding that we're asking for in the 24-25 budget. The CAFFA grant we're estimating that we might receive $694,490. Fees and other charges, $613, and when you add other of 200, and when you add the general fund in, it gives us a total revenue of $5,783,053. And on the next page, that's broken out into two categories. Personal services, our labor would be $3,992,881. Materials and services, this would include chargebacks for use of other county departments, $1,790,172, and the total expenditures match the total revenue of $5,783,053. And do you have any questions?
Thanks, Dave. Questions? No? No? Nope, we don't have any questions.
All right,
Thank you, Dave. Yeah.
Bye.
All right, next up is the surveyor. Morning, Scott.
Morning. Well, for those of you that don't know me in public, I am Scott Fine. I am your elected Jackson County surveyor. Served as the county surveyor since 2012 and have a lot of in-depth knowledge as to how we make this operation work here at Jackson County and the exceptional work that we do here for all of our citizens, which is not just me as your county surveyor, but it is the people that choose to work with me here at the county surveyor's office. We have an extremely bright and talented team. So me alone, I don't get to take all the credit. I'll kind of give you an overview of what we do and the importance to society, and then break down for you the economics of how the surveyor's operation functions. Surveying is, in my personal and professional opinion, is really truly is the fundamental fabric of society, really as our county clerk's offices. Land is our most important asset that we have, and surveying and the records that we have and that the county clerk's office has really enable us to physically cohabitate in a hopefully peaceful manner and have a thriving economy in the United States is because of our survey system. It was established in 1785, and that was the public land survey system. That is the basis for all land ownership in the western United States. County surveyors are tasked with maintaining the physical landmarks of that system. We have over 20,000 of these marks in the county. Additionally, we are tasked with the statutory compliance for the review of maps of survey. This is road surveys, boundary surveys, property line adjustments, and then land division plats as well, being partitions, subdivisions, condominiums. Surveying is a extremely complex profession that really, after all the years that I have done this, it's almost like a hybridization between civil engineering and the practice of law. And surveyors really operate in a quasi-judicial capacity. We create evidence, we evaluate evidence, we put forth people's property rights on the ground, and we are the only entity in the state of Oregon that is legally allowed to locate property boundaries. So how does this translate after I give you this large overview of like, what do we do for Jackson County? And real world impacts of it. I think after the Almeda and Obenchain fires, it highlighted the importance of surveying in Jackson County, probably greater than anything else that we will see in our time. And I hope something like that never happens again, because it's extremely tragic. But literally, we had whole communities that went back to original town plats that burned to the ground. Then bulldozers came in. Survey marks were destroyed. And we're not just talking the public land corner systems, we're talking road monuments, individual lot corners, and we have people that are trying to build homes, and they have to know where they are because their legal rights in terms of the deed records and their legal description that is of record with the county clerk's office has to be located on the ground. So all of a sudden overnight, we had a explosion of workload, and this was after all of the housing related matters that the state of Oregon is struggling with. Like, we just can't build houses quickly enough. The governor's task force has reached out to county surveyors related to how can we get plats processed faster. And they're actually very welcome. You know, the correspondence I had with Oregon Association of County Engineers and Surveyors is that came out of that inquiry of that governor's task force's surveying is the most efficient and probably fastest part of getting homes built in Oregon, because we have licensed professionals working on it, and county surveyors have statutory timeframes that we have to do things in. And here in Jackson County, with review of maps and plats, I'd say about half of the maps and plats that we review, we get them out in 50% of the time that's required by state law. And I really think that's a testament to our skill and intellect, especially after the increased workload from just housing needs, and also the natural disasters that have occurred, combined with the fact that I think in 2020, the city of Ashland eliminated their city surveyor position for the first time since 1986, and literally my map and plat and property line adjustment workload overnight increased 35%. We didn't add any employees. So what we do is extremely, extremely important. We have over 150 years of records. Title companies rely on us, landowners rely on us, the tax assessor's office relies on us in terms of having accurate records, because the assessment maps, which you note in the upper right corner says for assessment and taxation purposes only, that is how they draw those maps, is based off of the survey records and also coordinates that we have provided them for years relative to the state plane coordinate system through as a byproduct of our corner restoration program. And that's actually something we, years past, there used to be interdepartmental charges. We've just been able to address the matter where it's a byproduct that if they need a coordinate, we typically have a corner restoration project to do, and as part of that corner restoration work that we're doing, we do geodetic control surveys, which are precise positioning in a relative to mass center of the earth statutory coordinate system that is a legal way to put those corners back. When I first came to work for the county surveyor's office as a technician in 2006 under Roger Roberts, the office did very, very little of that. And that was because the office was staffed with a county surveyor and more technician type positions. And that was something that I was able to bring to the office, and working with another fellow in the office who has since retired, we really introduced geodetic control surveys to the county surveyor's office. And I have staffed the county surveyor's office in a way with folks that are extremely capable. I don't know if this committee is aware, but that in Oregon and the world as a whole, we have under 400 registered professional surveyors with an Oregon license. The Oregon Department of Transportation is the largest employer of surveyors in the state, who employs about close to 200 surveyors. And that's because they take care of all the state right-of-ways. So there's this massive shortfall, and somehow I have, over the years of working here, I think just through our reputation, we have, besides myself, we have 3 other licensed professional surveyors that work in the office. And this is out of necessity. We don't have the ability in terms of having a whole bunch of technicians or multiple licensed surveyors that can oversee technicians because we just don't have the funding to be able to do it. And so I've designed the department to function in a manner with as few people as possible by having very intellectually competent, well-qualified people. And this doesn't just, deal with our licensed surveyors in our office. Our administrative support staff has exceptional knowledge in real property that provides service to our citizens. And we even have an extremely talented GIS staff in the office that, I don't know if you remember years ago, the county surveyor's office's records were all paper-based. After I became county surveyor, it took about 2 years, and we put all of the records on the web, and this was really a service to the community. It enabled people to get them instantaneously. The title companies were extremely grateful. We work extremely well with the private sector, and this isn't just private sector surveyors. These are local land developers, these are land use planners, these are land use attorneys, civil engineers, various agencies, just because of how broad-based the surveying profession is and how many things it impacts. So I could talk for a long, long time about surveying, and every year you guys ask me to hurry up, and or I remember one year when Commissioner Skundrick was here, he asked me if I was going to talk about dinosaurs when I started talking about geodesy. So I really do enjoy doing this because it's a rare opportunity to highlight what is otherwise a very quiet part of the county that people just don't think about. People think that I've heard things over the years that, county surveyors, it's really just like a technical position. Is it professional? Like, why do we elect a county surveyor? And there's a tremendous amount of good reasons to do that. But surveying, I think you guys can start to see, how powerful surveying is and the decisions that a county surveyor has to make and the long-standing impacts that it has on society and how important it is to do a good job. So I think I've talked enough about kind of what we're doing, the economics of how we do this. I'll be upfront, it has been an extreme challenge since I became the county surveyor in 2012. When I became the county surveyor in 2012, the department had just had, I actually asked for a audit of the corner restoration program, and that audit was performed by Eric Spivak. Actually, it was Tanya Bays and Nicole Rollins and Debbie Taylor, when she was the auditor, that did all of the work on it. Eric had just showed up. But his name is on it. But we basically looked at how can we spend this dedicated corner restoration money, because it is very, very expressed in statute what we do with it. And the reason that I asked for that audit was because when Kerry Bradshaw was the county surveyor before me, he asked some very, very difficult questions, and it was revealed that past county surveyors, I don't think any malintent, had mistakenly utilized a little over $300,000 of corner restoration funds to subsidize the non-corner restoration portion of the department. We have, as you can see in our budget, we have 2 programs, 2 distinct business units under Fund 26, one single umbrella, but the funds are tracked separately. So at that point in time, we're literally sitting there, and I'm tasked as the county surveyor, and we have no money to deal with this program of maps and plats. And literally, I had to make some very, very hard decisions, and we went from 6 FTE down to 3. No administrative support staff. I worked close to 80 hours a week for years. Once we got through those hard economic times, and the way that we did that was by doing a tremendous amount of survey work for other county departments. We were the road department surveyor for some time. We worked on multiple capital improvement projects. The Expo Park, we did a tremendous amount of work there. The DA's building, the Health and Human Services building. I did all of the boundary surveying, topographic surveying on that, and even the 11th hour, I'll never forget when they forgot they needed power to connect to the building, and I wrote an easement on a Sunday. But we've really worked hard over the years to find ways to fund the surveyor's office and do the super important work for the community. And we did that for a long time, and it was just frankly just not sustainable. You know, it was going to lead to just massive burnout in the county surveyor's office, and then just when the economy really got going again, we had so many maps and plats that we could not necessarily continue to do that work. There just wasn't enough time. And as a licensed professional surveyor, I take my ethical duties as a surveyor, my professional duties as a registrant with the state very seriously. And the quality of our work and reputation speaks for itself. And I think if anyone ever takes a look at, I mean, I'd have to think of how many pages, but it's probably over 45 pages of a boundary survey that we did for the county airport. And this was a result of Byrne Case, who was the airport director after the county lost a adverse possession claim related to the 911 center. So surveying is super important even to county property. Another example would be when there was the Gold Ray Dam was removed, and there was a particular landowner that had a water right and an easement on county land. And there was a very contentious lawsuit, and the county retained a firm, I believe it was Cable Houston out of Portland. And I was the #1 person that those folks talked to help figure out this issue. And we did a boundary survey on it because everybody's fighting and nobody knows where anything is. And, oh, we have the survey product. Issue settled, everybody moves on. So we've done a lot of important things over the years. And we just got to a point where, because there's so much corner restoration work to do, and there is so many maps and plats to review, which was furthered by No More City of Ashland surveyor, we just had to stop doing the work. So then there was a economic issue of, well, how do we fund the non-corner restoration program of the county surveyor's office? So in 2014, I approached the board with these issues, and I had talked to Danny over the years of, why are we the only county surveyor's office in Western Oregon that does not have any general fund support? And it was made very, very clear to me that that was not an option, that there's not enough to go around, which is why there are many fee-based departments in this county, and there's hard decisions that are made with that pool of general fund money, and county surveyor's office isn't a part of it. So I worked with county council at the time, Rick Whitlock, and a very bright gentleman. I think they used to be county council years ago, Mike Jewett, and I worked together, and we created a surveyor services fee that is money collected by the county clerk on each document, because the nexus is everything relates to real property. And we can't describe real property without a functioning county surveyor's office. So that board at that time supported that, and we were the first county surveyor's office in the state to have such fee. There is only one other county surveyor's office in the state that has that fee. And as I've been upfront with the whole entire community, I also work part-time as the Curry County surveyor outside of my regular working hours here at Jackson County. And through my experience in how to deal with these matters, I was able to help Curry County with that issue. And so this is, something that I've been able to bring to Jackson County to keep the county surveyor's office fiscally solvent. Because I'll be upfront with this board, it got to a point where I had to look at Danny and said, unless we figure something out, I cannot continue to be the county surveyor, because relative to the statutory duties in law of the county surveyor's office and my professional duties as a registrant, unless we have more staff, we can't meet the requirements, and I'm not going to put my license at risk. And that was in 2014. Because there was definitely a lot of combativeness to being able to go to the board. And that's always an interesting process as an elected official here at Jackson County, being able to approach the Board of Commissioners with an issue as an agenda item to have a discussion. It's been made very clear to me over the years that I can't just do that. Bring an issue to you over the years, which, an example of that would be, I've tried for many times to address the inconsistencies in our county code with property line adjustments to bring them in line with state law that has evolved over the years. I have been told I cannot bring that issue to the Board of Commissioners. So, kind of fast forward, this is, it's been a struggle. It's been very, very hard. And we do an outstanding job. And I think the budget numbers that exist are representative of that. You will see some fund balances in our budget. I'll move through our slides pretty quickly so we can see where our money comes from. And that does look like a large amount of money. There are dedicated funds there. And I have the percentages. 68% of them are dedicated funds. When I became county surveyor in 2012, we had about, I want to say $780,000 of corner fund reserves, and I think maybe $60,000 in the surveyor program of a fund balance. And so we didn't even have enough money in the surveyor program to staff it without actually at the beginning of the year, because there was just no money there. So the reason why we carry these fund balances is a lot of counties have to get outside support, and you guys have explained this very well. Like, we start the beginning of the year, we have fund balances, otherwise we have to wait for tax season, and then we're borrowing money at interest, right? So at one point, when Harvey Bragg was here, I even talked with Harvey. I said, can we borrow money from the general fund with some interest? And it was like, no, you can't do that. So I kept working extremely long hours on all these county projects. And that helped as well, because the money came in from some of these fees. And additionally, and we also, because in my working those long hours, so we had to finish those projects because we had an obligation, and then move on where we had a sustainable, independent source of income. So we also all of a sudden experienced a pretty good housing boom when interest rates were like 3.5%. And so as we're getting all of these recordings with this new fee, the fund balance built up. And we also had a lot of fees coming in from our maps and plats. And that was something else that I've done since I've been here as the county surveyor, is I've taken a hard look every year through our time studies and come up with fees that actually are a true direct cost for the work that we do. And that has helped tremendously. In terms of revenue that comes in, we're predicting this year close to $250,000 of fees for maps and plats to be filed in the county surveyor's office. When I became county surveyor, we were under $80,000. Past county surveyors did not adequately capture those costs. And that is how we've been able to sustain the work, combined with the surveyor services fee, and I'm particularly talking about the surveyor program. The fund balance continued to grow in the corner program during that time because we had so much of that work to do that was non-corner restoration. And, you know, I keep in very close contact with the county clerk's office. Obviously, I'm a math person as a surveyor. I run statistics, like, since I've been county surveyor, of what our revenue is each month by all of our individual sources. And I literally have 12 years of a 2 sigma 95% confidence level spreadsheet to look at the mean and the plus or minus variance at the 95% confidence level of how much that mean is going to vary each month, and we budget accordingly. So it's not like there's this massive amount of money just sitting there for no purpose. The last couple years has been a struggle as interest rates have risen. Recordings are down. I'm sure you've heard the county clerk talk about it over the last several years of how much recordings are down. They went up about 38% above normal to about 25% below normal. So we literally have had like a, 65% swing in recordings from like highs to low. And the money that comes to the county surveyor's office is on a monthly basis. So we have to have a fund balance there in order to function. Otherwise, I'm coming to this committee saying we have to have general fund or we got to go borrow the money from somewhere. So it's really, I think, a testament to the hard work that we do and our financial abilities in the department. Also with that, we do receive some interest income from those fund balances, which is great. We see about $43,000 a year between the two different fund balances. I think I've just explained, how that functions. Fund balance objectives, and along these lines, another source of revenue that we have come up with, and this is really, there is one person here at the county that I would say, we need to give them an accolade, and that is Nicole Rollins, the county auditor. After the natural disasters that we had with the fires, Nicole came to me and said, is there something that happened, that affects you guys? And she did that to all county departments. And the Obenchain fire and the Almeda fire, we had all these people that needed to rebuild. And we were the first organization, literally in the history of the United States, that has ever received disaster relief money from FEMA related to survey monuments. And Nicole and I spent a lot of time together, a lot of hours on the phone, and even took FEMA staff out in the field. We tried to pick somewhere that wasn't too steep, didn't have a lot of poison oak, because we figured the guy would say no. But we were able to get an award, I believe, of close to about $1.4 million. We have been working with the auditor and receiving reimbursements over that time. The amount that's going to come in overall during the duration of that program, that work, is going to be much less. Some of the corners weren't damaged. Some of the corners necessarily weren't eligible, but at the beginning they asked us for a whole list. And one thing that was very unclear at the beginning of this process was, will they cover administrative overhead costs? It will not. So all that FEMA pays for is wages of the staff to do the work, mileage, and I mean, we're literally to the level of, counting survey monuments and bearing tree tags. But we set a standard that has not just helped us, but it helped Lane County, Douglas County, Marion County, and really fire disaster affected communities. And just this past year, I had correspondence with a surveyor out of Hawaii related to the Lahaina fires and how to deal with this with FEMA. I just happen to know some surveyors in Hawaii, and years ago I gave a presentation at the surveyors conference there. And so, I mean, we've done something here really important, and it's helped the county financially and it's helped our citizens. That work wraps up at the end of '24, and we will be done with it and have taken care of all the monuments. So there's some revenue from there as well. Overall staffing, there's 5.5 of us, have the breakdown by program. One thing that really is, I'd say, mission critical for the county surveyor's office is employee retention. This is an intellectual capital profession that has a tremendous amount of history in local survey matters. You have to have that. Surveying's not equal all places. Like, this has evolved over time. Land's been handled differently in different places. And so we really try and hope that people stay here. And a challenge in that, because there's so few surveyors, and it's mainly been driven by ODOT and the public sector, is compensation. I'm sure you've heard from Danny over the years that, I've been an advocate to compensate the staff in the surveyor's office, because we've had a lot of incredible people leave over the years. And once they leave, we can't get them back. And we've just happened to gotten extremely lucky that I knew a few people here locally that wanted to come out of the private sector, and they applied for jobs when we had an opportunity. And if these local people leave, no one is going to move to Southern Oregon for the wages that we pay our SEIU surveyors or any of our other technical staff with these skills, because there's such a shortage in the world. And so we should just be very grateful for the people that we have here. And so I went to Danny with this issue of the salary when they were doing the salary review for SEIU, and was told that there was a wage compression issue with the county surveyor's office. Somehow that's translated into, and because HR was telling me we can't pay these people more, this upsets organizational structure. And I said, look, guys, I said, we have unionized ODOT surveyors with no supervisory capacity making more money than the county surveyor. ODOT had 4 openings at the time for surveyors in White City. Everyone was going to leave. What ended up happening was I was able to, people care about the work they do. They're extremely loyal to the county. They ended up staying here. What ended up happening was all the surveyors at the city of Medford left. Some of them went to ODOT, some of them went to go private. And I use that as an example because the city of Medford has a city surveyor's office. It was all vacant for 3 years. Our own road department's gone through these issues with a road department surveyor. They just gave up even advertising. My point is, I have stood up repeatedly because I made it clear to Danny over the years that if I cannot do my job in accordance with the law as the county surveyor, I cannot be the county surveyor because it puts my license at risk. So I will continue to stand up because this work is super, super important to the community. I care about the county surveyor's office, as does all of our staff. We could all leave, go work other places, earn a lot more money elsewhere, but we choose to stay here. And the community, me personally, the community wants me here, which there's no one else wants to be the county surveyor. And that is in part because I do an outstanding job. And it's just a challenging position, and this committee and Board of Commissioners over the years has been extremely supportive of the county surveyor's office. I know some of the things I've said today might touch on some things that might make certain people up here a little bit uncomfortable. And I'm just going to dive right into it because after what I went through this last week, this needs to be said. 3 of you up here were at a salary review committee this last week. 2 of you attacked me on based on fraudulent and baseless allegations that were brought forth to you relative to my performance as the county surveyor by our county administrator, Danny Jordan. Completely baseless. This was all a public meeting. It was all recorded. It highlights an ongoing toxic situation that the county administrator is creating for the county surveyor's office that is destroying my morale personally, destroying the morale of the county surveyor's office staff, and it's just it frankly is the largest challenge that I have faced as the county surveyor over the years is Danny Jordan's hostility towards
Oh,
me.
thank you.
Excuse me.
Thank you,
No,
Scott.
I need
No,
to- I need-
excuse me, I'm the chair, and as I mentioned to you Tuesday, I'm in charge of this meeting. I think that we're veering off path here for what you've been invited for, so
well,
I appreciate your
Chair,
presentation.
Can I finish, please? What
No.
I need to say
Well,
is
I
that let
appreciate
our work
your
speak for itself.
presentation, but we're
When you
done.
make your economic
We're
decisions,
done now. Thank
let
you.
my reputation
Thank you, Scott.
and the work of the office
We're done
speak
now.
for itself.
We're done now.
Stop allowing Danny to
Thank
attack
you.
me.
We're done
Stop
now.
supporting it. Stop subverting
Okay,
the
we're going to take a
democratic
break,
process.
Please.
This is not acceptable.
We're taking a break. We'll be back in 10 minutes. right now? Do we have anybody in the audience who would like to give public comment? I see someone standing, so I'll call on you in just a second. So we have rules about public comments, and I will read them now. Only the chairperson or a member of the Budget Committee may question a speaker. There will be no interruption of a speaker from the audience and no debates on the floor. Applause is not permitted. A speaker may criticize or support a proposal, but the speaker shall not argue with another speaker directly. A person wishing to speak shall sign in or raise his or her hand and wait to be recognized by the chairperson. After being recognized, the speaker shall state his or her name and address before proceeding with his or her statement. The duration of any comment is limited to 5 minutes and should cover factual information relevant to the budget proposal at issue. Repetition by a speaker, please, shall be avoided. Please come forward. While she's coming forward, Budget Committee members, there was another email that was received that's been distributed to you that I encourage you to read before we get into deliberations this afternoon. Aye.
Good morning. Laura Ahern, 8595 Upper Applegate. In 2012, citizen Colleen Roberts stood here and expressed concern that commissioners are paid 3 times average workers. I agree with her. This remains a serious concern today. Here's you. Here's the median wage according to the Bureau of Labor and Industry of Oregon. Have you members of the Salary Committee been worrying that the unexpected drama about the surveyor distracted you from doing your job? You never discussed why you endorsed the administration's proposal to give Commissioner Dodder a $12,189 raise. He announced over 7 months ago that he's leaving, so this isn't a reward for loyalty. On top of those thousands, taxpayers will cover taxes and retirement, plus a junket to Tampa. How is this in the long-term interest of the county? Mr. Stevenson, as a member of your credit union, I trust that this is not how salary decisions are made in your organization. It's been asserted that every discretionary decision to spend $1 from the general fund makes 81 cents less available for public safety. How much will public safety be compromised by the proposed raises and associated perks? I'm also concerned that you have not brought basic rules of sound management to this task. Questions and responses in the lead up to your meeting were clearly scripted to defend the system, which has rolled along for 16 years. You should be representing the taxpayers in objectively questioning the system. Dr. David Gilmore has. He deems it a failed experiment. Mr. Morris and Ms. Sepsic, you in particular face personal conflicts to defend your role in this system. Are you willing and able to step back and be objective and take a fresh look? In my legal career, I did compliance work for Fortune 500 companies. Never would they hire my team year after year. No sound company would, even with great relationships inside the board and the leadership team. If a mistake has been made, a problem missed, a new idea not captured, you don't want those same people making excuses and ignoring past failings. The concept of internal equity is philosophically the opposite of what the job of commissioners should require. Commissioners are supposed to be outside the bureaucracy, working for the people. It is unseemly to be pegged into the hierarchy and then automatically bump up with each collective bargaining agreement you approve. And the seniority step system is especially pernicious. When someone runs to serve a 4-year term, they shouldn't need to be lured with annual raises to live up to that commitment. The step system rewards a commissioner simply for avoiding a recall. On day 1 of taking office, citizens should expect a new commissioner to be competent, have done their homework, and be ready to serve. Their vote carries full weight from that day 1. They're not in 6 years of training. Oregon law lists some factors that you must consider, but in no way limits you to those items or says that they determine your final decision about salaries. You should consider feedback from the community. You do consider comparable counties. You should be concerned that uncritical devotion to the system has elevated commissioners' salaries so far out of whack. It's time for an objective review. Finally, I am troubled that the lay members, following the lead of administration, have essentially become a performance reviewers of officials elected by voters. Last year, you monetarily reprimanded the assessor. On Tuesday, personal sentiments were aired that I don't think had any place in your statutorily defined role. Mr. Morris, you obviously have power over the surveyor's pay, and you wanted to launch an audit. I guess I'm really troubled that the role of the lay members of the salary committee perhaps needs some revision and some very explicit definition so that we all can agree on the right direction. I thank you for responding to my concerns on the record during your deliberations today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else for public comment? Yes, okay, come forward. You can state your name and address, please.
Yeah, I'm Denise Krause. I live in rural Ashland. And I don't even know what I'm going to say today, except that it's been really interesting to watch the process and educational. And I have been listening to the community a lot about how they think the salary structure works. And I know that things changed in 2008, and there was a change to the step structure. And that has created this situation today. I know that Dr. Gilmore was a part of approving that then, and that he has since admitted that that was a failed experiment. What it's brought us to is today, where you have the power today to raise your salaries to $150,000. But you also have the option to not do that. You don't have to take that. That's up to you, really. And so I think that it's, we've been looking at the salaries, we've been looking at the structure. If I were elected to county commissioner, I would agree to take $75,000. And the difference of that I would like to have go into grant funds for community needs such as animal welfare projects. So I think that we're frustrated because there's so many community needs that aren't being met, and I want to use the animal shelter as an example. 18 years, we need an animal shelter. There are many of us who we can't stand by and watch animals be put down. We need to find the money. We need that to be a priority. We need to look at our priorities for the public, for what the needs are in the community. And if it means that we take less salary and we free up more salary for community needs, then I think that's what needs to happen. And it would put us more in line with what's right. This structure is an unfortunate structure. You've been able to benefit from it for many years, but I really do know and think that it needs to be reset to something that's more in line with what the community can accept. So again, I would remind you that you aren't obligated to approve that salary raise today. You also aren't, you could even refuse to take or back down to $75,000. And I appreciate your comments, Colleen, in 2012, that it's not right when commissioners make 3 times as much as the average wages of Jackson County. Those are the people we're here to represent. And so I think it's about, we need to think about what's really fair and what is about public service and how we can do the best job at that. So I appreciate the time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to come forward? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to finance. Michelle and Shannon, right?
Yes, thank you. Oh, I'll put that. Some members of the board, budget committee, Mr. Chair, I am Shannon Bell, Senior Deputy County Administrator, as well as Finance Director, and I am going to introduce Michelle Wickham, who has been with the county for 20 years, and she's definitely the strong brains behind this operation. She's the GAP guru, or the GASB guru, I should say, and the E1 expert. I'm going to let her present the first part of finance, as she's taken over most of these duties with my move up to administration, and then I'll take over and talk about treasury.
Hey.
There you go.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you for that. Okay, so we're going to just jump right in and talk about the finances revenue, which is expected to maintain relatively consistent with prior years, with just a slight decline. We do receive CAFA grant money from the state to support tax collection activities. Our tax program collects fees for their services. We have land contract and foreclosure sale revenue, so we'll enter into a land contract when someone purchases a foreclosed property at an auction and is unable to pay for that at the time of the auction. We don't offer that anymore, but that was something we did offer. And the foreclosure sales are amounts that we would receive that we were allowed to keep when we did sell a property. And we do receive general fund support and amounts received for services that we provide to outside counties, or excuse me, municipalities. Right now, we charge 2 small counties for their tax collection payment processing services. And in 21-22, the amount that you see there is reimbursements from the City of Phoenix for when we were performing their financial operations. In 23-24, you will see that we did lose our commercial rental revenue when the property management program was transferred to facility maintenance. And also in 23-24, we added a new business analyst position, as well as had a organization restructure. When our finance director moved to CAO, her position was backfilled and we reorganized a little. And so those increases in salaries resulted in an increase in chargeback revenue for our accounting and treasury programs. I wanted to point out that when you look at the graph, it kind of looks like chargebacks were increased to kind of compensate for our commercial rental, but that is not the case. It was just the result of the changes that were made in that year. And lastly, I kind of wanted to dive a bit more into our rebate revenue. As part of our purchasing card program, the county receives an annual rebate from Bank of America for a percentage of our spend. And we use that rebate to offset accounting chargebacks based on a percentage of each department use of our overall spend. We've really emphasized the growth of this program, and not only to utilize the benefits of the rebate, but also it's a GFOA best practice to use a purchasing card program to eliminate the low dollar, high frequency checks that are time consuming and can be expensive to issue. So we've utilized the purchasing card program quite effectively. As you can see, we also budget very conservatively when it comes to our rebate. In 23-24, we only budgeted $115,000, but we actually received $182,000. So it's quite a significant jump in what we were expecting, which just goes to show like how well we've been at using our program. In 24-25, we've only expected $120,000 in revenue, just to keep it conservative to ensure that we can actually collect that amount. And since we began in 2007, we've collected approximately $1.4 million from the rebate on our purchasing card program, which is really impressive. Moving on to expenditures, our expenditures are holding rather steady. There is a slight increase. Our largest expenditure is our personnel costs, which increased in fiscal year 23-24, which I kind of already talked to with the added FTE and the salary changes. The materials and services for our treasury and accounting program is remaining steady. We did lose the materials and services expenses when the property management program was transferred, but we didn't lose all of them. So the taxation program absorbed the management of tax foreclosure properties. So you'll see an increase in expense expected there as we have to pay required utilities, taxes and assessments of other municipalities, normal management of properties, and property cleanup. It's not uncommon for us to foreclose on properties that are overgrown, are littered with trash and debris. There's vehicles, trailers, other equipment. Sometimes there's still people living on them. And so we have kept, that cost within the taxation program. Historically, we've used foreclosure sale proceeds to cover this cost, but with a recent Supreme Court ruling, of Tyler versus Hennepin County, which says that you can no longer keep the excess proceeds from our last auction. We set all the funds aside in a liability account while we await guidance on how we're supposed to proceed with our foreclosures and the money we receive from selling the foreclosed property. So as a result, we did receive $50,000 in additional general fund support so that we can continue to actively manage these properties and so that while they await auction. To talk briefly about the strategic objectives and outcomes for the taxation program. Their objective is to process tax collections in an efficient and cost-effective manner using best practices and modern equipment. For our busy tax season, which is mid-October to the end of November, we collected just over $300 million. This is not only Jackson County, but all of the taxing entities within the county. The predominant payment is still checks, though we did see a decline in credit card payments. But if we looked back to prior history, in 22, there was a large jump in the number of credit card payments that were processed, so we just appear to be going back down to a historic of 5% use on credit cards. And we are the recipient of the GFOA Triple Crown Award. What that means is we've received rewards for our distinguished budget presentation, our certificate of achievement for financial reporting, and the popular annual financial report. So these are all reports that we put together that we receive awards from GFOA. And it's not something that a lot of organizations are able to claim that they have achieved. We're only 1 in 2 Oregon counties that have achieved this Triple Crown, so it's kind of exciting. And now I'm passing it over to Shannon to talk about investments.
Thank you. Okay, so for Treasury, we have our #1 objective is safety of the capital in our investments. I don't ever want to be on the front page of the paper for losing an investment for the county. Our total portfolio right now is sitting in just over $403 million, which is the largest it's been in the 15 years I've been here. Obviously, there's quite a bit of the ARPA money that's been in there for about 3 years, earning significant interest for us. We focus on safety, so you'll see diversification of the portfolio. A good over 50% of it is in government agencies, and then we have slices of corporate and cash, and the local government investment pool has a small piece. Money market funds, we have a great relationship with our bank. They offer us a money market account that matches the LGIP rate. So it's really easily accessible for liquidity. And then we've got some local municipal bonds that are based in Oregon and California per statute. Our credit ratings, primarily AAA. We've got a little, the no rating is obviously the money markets and the LGIPs. They're not rated on the markets. We've got the lowest rated investment right now is at a single A. Second, an objective of Treasury is liquidity. We always have to have money to pay the bills. So this is the two-headed mountain, I guess, of our liquidity schedule. You see a big dip down. That's obviously when tax collection happens. I don't need my investments to mature during October, November, because we're getting a lot of cash, as Michelle just mentioned. We get hundreds of millions of dollars, not all to us, but it helps with our liquidity. We do have the authority. I went out in 2010 to the Oregon State Treasurer to extend our investment policy from the statutory 18 months out to 5 years because of we do have a nice fund balance that can be invested out further to gain some rate and diversification. Third objective is yield. And as Commissioner Dyer pointed out in our meeting for the first time, the LGIP did barely beat the county pool this last year. They're trending just a little bit higher. I blame it on COVID because we did have some, what I like to call COVID bonds. You know, they're still at the lower levels. Those are maturing off very quickly, not quite quick enough, but it's neck and neck. I think I'll get back up there. And so we're hitting a yield just above 5% on our portfolio. That is it. Questions on finance?
Questions, anybody? Yeah?
A pretty
April?
simple one. Fiscal year 2021 and 2022, one of two counties in Oregon. What was the other county?
Deschutes.
Deschutes, okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Shannon. And Michelle? Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. I'm the next one up, too.
Oh, that's right. Well, please continue as we move into county administration.
All right.
Yeah.
It's a trifecta, because I'm just going to stay here for a while. All right, so county administration,
Thank you.
and Lori is passing those out. This program consists of the self-insurance, facility maintenance, administration, HR, emergency management, audit, water master, law library, CDBG grants, mail courier, and economic and special development. The fund balance that you see is primarily, or is for our self-insurance reserves. We are self-insured for health as well as our general and auto and workers' comp. And then, let's see. Okay. So the next slide, we have a small growth in revenue of about $3 million, where the grants are primarily it's grants and others. So we get about almost $600,000 from the library district for facility maintenance to continue to maintain those libraries. We've got some emergency management and water master grants in there as well. Our fees and charges are primarily the law library. So there's a library that people can go and research materials. Our interfund, that's our chargebacks. Personnel went up about 4.8%. We had about a 4% COLA, so that's right in line with that. We didn't have any big movements, just a few step increases to bring it up over the 4%. Materials and services is up 7.4%. Everything's up materials and services are up. The special payments is a CDBG grant. We haven't had one in a long time, but we always put a placeholder in there in case we have the opportunity. And then our ending balance and reserves, that's again the self-insurance reserve, and that's going up about 5%. We have a small uptick in FTEs of 0.5. So here's our budget by program. Obviously, risk, health, and workers' comp is the largest of the expenses as we cover all of the self-insurance needs of the county. There's 1.89 FTE in that program. Sounds like a partial person, but it's really a little bit of a lot of people as we have different functions within the county working in that. So I've got someone up in accounting who does fixed assets, so she keeps track of the insurance asset ledgers. We've got people in legal. We've got Lori over here does some of it as well. Facility maintenance is 14.95 FTE, about $5 million budget. Admin's 4.35 FTE. HR is 6.01. Emergency management has 3. Internal audit 3. Water master 3. Law library and CDBG aren't programs with personnel. And we've got 1.55 in the mail courier. They do a great job of getting all the mail delivered throughout the entire county. So total expenditures for the department is $49,436,185. That's as fast as I can go.
That was great. So I did want to comment about the self-insurance
Yes.
plans. Just as we went through the details of them in March, so I don't need to dwell on that. I just wanted to comment that the county has over the years saved considerable amount of money, millions of dollars, with our self-insurance programs. And I am quite satisfied with the review we did in March that these reserves that are set up to support the self-insurance funds are adequately funded and will meet the needs of the county going forward. So just a general comment, not a question. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Other questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Now on to the expo. Rob.
I'm just going to stand here. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction.
You're just playing with me now, aren't you?
Could we
I have
please ask you to sit down?
I'm a little involved in a lot of things. When Helen Baker left in September of 2023, I was appointed the interim director for the expo, and I have spent the last few months trying to I have gotten them to a point where they can sustain themselves. They've got a great team out there. They're just, we're still wounded by the music festival loss, but you know what? They're resilient and they're going forward, focusing on the fair. That's their core mission, is to do a fair with some ancillary income as well to help them throughout the year. And I'm going to turn it over to Rob Holmbeck, and he is the operations manager for the expo, and the fair board has recently said that he is the manager of the expo, which is great. He's handling all of the day-to-day staffing and dealing with the public and all the things that I don't have the bandwidth to do. And it's been a pleasure working with him, and he's extremely coachable. And I will say that he actually put this budget together, so I'm going to let him present the budget.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, yeah, I want to say that I can't say enough about Shannon and this last few months, just the ability that coming in alongside us and helping us prop us up and help us keep going. We've made a lot of changes in the expo in the last 6 months, and some of them I think are going to have benefits way down the road. So to go through the budget items, the first one is the county fair. We took our budgets, over the last couple of years, I took them and I was very conservative on income and making sure that I didn't overshoot and be too high on the income. So like for concerts and stuff, I put down that we were only going to sell 50% of the tickets, and that's where our revenue comes from. But yet those expenses are still in there, and that there are I put in increases because costs are going to continue to go up. So for the fair, we're projecting a $1.2 million income revenue, and with a $539,000 net to our operating budget. So in the overall expo, where I lost my place, I'm sorry. We were requesting overall revenue. We're looking at $2.9 million coming in. A lot of that is coming from rentals. We have not seen a drop in any of our building rentals throughout the year. We are booked 3 and 4 or 5 events every weekend for the next year at least. Our programs that we put into place track it now, so we can see projected income. We're projected over the next 12 months to exceed our rental projections that we have in this budget. So I'm excited about that, because that means we were conservative in our budget, but yet we should be able to have a fund balance at the end of the year. Over the last year, we have eliminated 2 full-time employees and 3 less of our extra help employees that we had. So the 6 of us that are left are doing a lot of different jobs. And so that has, the cross-training and that has been great, because now everybody understands what each other does, and that's been a great thing for our organization. We have cut a couple of non-performing events. We had a couple of events that, we tried for several years. They just didn't make money, so we just eliminated them. We can't afford to do them, so let's just eliminate them and stick with our core. That's kind of my mantra when I spoke at Rotary a couple weeks ago. Is like things are the same, but they're going to be different. We have to take care of our core events. Fair and rodeo and holiday market are 2 our three biggest events that we actually produce. And so we're focusing on that. I'm gonna try to maximize what we get out of that. In December, we implemented 2 software programs to help manage the expo. One is a rental software that now we manage all of the rentals from initial contact with a renter all the way through the payment system and follow-up. It's all, it's taken everything from being binders of paper to all online. So it's saving us a ton of time and a ton of expense just because it's all saved in the program. We have moved to another program for our sponsor side of things where we can track. It's the same thing. It's an online program where we track all the sponsors. Everything's done digitally. Everything is auditable with Nicole. It's all able to be watched all the way through. Everybody sees exactly what was promised, exactly what was given, to hold accountability for what we do for our sponsors. So, and then the expo by program, as you can see, we have our main events, that the fair and the sponsored events there's the rodeo, the holiday market are the 2 big things in there, and the facility rentals are the day-to-day rentals. Shannon and I got some old records from the Access Vault people, and there were records there that showed that they were renting the expos 8 or 9 times a month back 20 years ago. We're doing that a week almost. We're doing 6, 7 events a week just in rentals. So the rental part is going really well. And we're doing our best to keep our overhead down, keep our administrative costs down as we move to all the online stuff. And then we've done a couple of new things also. We updated our rate and fee schedule and put things on there that weren't on there before, that we should be charging a renter for, TVs, stuff like that. So we're trying to create other income streams with that. One of those things that we did was we created a store at the office, because vendors and people will show up and they don't have connections to plug in. They don't have the right connections. And so we'd send them down to the store to buy them. So we just created a small store that if I forgot my extension cord, well, here, 15 bucks, there you go. And we make a little money on it, so it works well. A couple of weeks ago, I did the wild hair about selling chairs. You'll see the one there in the corner for Better Built Construction. I put one post on Facebook. We've sold 350 chairs already. And Stephanie at the office is working on another sponsor who looks like another 300 chairs that they're gonna purchase. And it will end up with a zero cost to the expo, but we'll have 850-pound chairs to use for events. So that's kind of cool. It was just kind of one of those, what if we did this? And it worked. So, and then we had the multi-use building coming. I've been involved in that since Helen left. Ryan has been great at keeping me up to speed, and we've been talking about different things that need to happen, and Ryan's been educating me a lot. I've never built a building before, so it's kind of interesting to see how that process works. So we are looking forward to the Pandemic Response Center and what that means for the expo. We're going to figure out how to make it make money, and we're going to move forward. And that was all I had. Oops.
Well, I think it's pretty clear from your presentation and from the conversations we had back in March that you guys are making a concerted effort to reverse the negative fund balance, which I greatly applaud and look forward to seeing next year that's back in the black. And I think with the efforts that you're making, you certainly are making headway. As I recall from the March meeting, you've already reduced that negative fund balance by a considerable amount. Is that
half?
By half? Yeah, that's great. So, anyway, I applaud the good effort and congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One thing I did forget, I mean, we did get a grant from the state of Oregon. I don't know if Shannon shared it or not, but we applied for a grant for through COVID funds from the state, and we got a $91,000 grant. So that will come off of our fund balance issue. So
That's the one that we talked about last meeting in their budget review.
Right.
We were hoping that it would be 500,000.
yeah,
Not 91,000.
Yeah.
But what happened, I think this is interesting, is legislation didn't originally include an allocation to the state fair. So they decided to include the state fair, and of course, that took a very large portion of what we thought was going to be available for distribution.
yeah. And we're working on another one that just came out. So
Okay.
hopefully,
Questions?
Again, probably just a comment, but it's encouraging to see us moving forward in this direction that considers both the fact that this is a resource that we want to provide entertainment and recreational opportunities to the public, but also we want to run it with good, sound business practices. And that can be a tough tightrope to walk, but it really appears that you're putting the effort and scrutinizing this in a way that will definitely help us get to that goal and that way of operating. So, good job.
thank you.
Dave, did you have a question? Oh, okay.
I did have one now.
Okay.
Just how long do you expect your, I guess, what would you call it, deeper expanded role in the expo to continue?
Well, in all honesty, when Helen started, I was helping her from a financial perspective. So they used to have a finance person on site, and so I took over that role. So I've been ingrained with the expo for over 8 years. It's really hard to walk away, I'm going to be honest, but Rob and his staff are doing a great job. I'm weaning myself away and just taking care of kind of the higher level policy type situations, and as well as some of the finance until I can get somebody else trained, but yeah, it'll be a while.
Part of the actual position descriptions of Deputy County Administrator along with myself is to step in and help take over management of departments or support management of departments when needed. And I fully expect Shannon will be involved with the Fair and Expo at some level all the time.
You know, Shannon, you made a big effort in the years past to create a reporting structure, financial reporting structure, as well as controls and procedures that are paying off now and allowing yourself to be weaned off of some of those duties. So anyway, any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is the Elected Officials Salary Committee report. Danny is going to do most of the heavy lifting on this, but before he does, I have a few things to say on this subject. In fact, a lot of things to say on this subject. Back in 2007, when I started on this committee and served for the first time on the Elected Officials Salary Review Committee, there were no real procedures in place, and to my dismay, the 3 lay members of the Budget Committee who were on the Elected Officials Salary Review Committee negotiated with each other about what the salary increase would be for the elected officials that year. And each one of us were kind of coming from a different place, and it was, I'm not going to say contentious, but like I said, we negotiated to an outcome that nobody was happy with. None of the elected officials were happy with the outcome. County leadership was not happy with the outcome, and the members of the committee were not happy with the outcome. Now, I believe it was Danny's first year as county administrator, and I don't think that he was very impressed with how that all went down either. And he worked with HR and with the Salary Advisory Committee over the next year to develop a salary administration plan for the elected officials. Now, when you look at the county as a whole, our classified employees are represented by the union, and within their collective bargaining agreement, they have a salary administration plan. Our law enforcement officers are represented by a union, and within their collective bargaining plan, they have also a salary administration plan. The management within the county have a salary administration plan, but the elected officials did not. So Human Resources, under the guidance of the county administrator, started working on a salary administration plan, which I have to say, every major organization that I've ever been involved with has salary administration plans for their employees. It's a best practice in human resources, without a doubt, for years. The salary administration plan, as developed by Human Resources, was modeled after the salary administration plan for management. It does include steps over 6 years, and it does include bands based on authority and scope of responsibility and other factors that Danny might go into when he takes a deeper dive into the plan in a few minutes. The commissioners are not in the top band. In the top band is the sheriff. Okay? And there are several other bands, and they all have their own starting salary at step 1, and they all have their high salary at step 6. And as people gain experience in their job, they progress through the 6 steps. So an incoming elected official starts at step 1, or the bottom of the salary band that they're in. Each year, the salary step gets increased by a cost of living increase. That is the same as for the county management. Am I correct in that statement, Danny? Yeah? Okay. Thank you. One of the factors that the Salary Administration Committee way back in 2007, and for me, ongoing over the past few years, 16 years, I guess was pointed out earlier, is that the salary administration plan allows us to create a professional level salary for the elected officials. And by having professional level salaries, we have the potential, or the better potential, of attracting candidates into all the elected positions who have the education, the experience, and the abilities to do an outstanding professional job. And my concern has always been that if we're arbitrary with that salary placement for elected officials, that we will not attract that level of professional. Yeah. No, I'm not. Sorry. I'm just gathering my thoughts. I would support whether we have 3 commissioners or 5 commissioners or 10 commissioners or 100 commissioners, a salary administration plan that pays the commissioners and the other elected officials at a professional level salary. Whether the electorate decides to move forward and add commissioners, that's fine. But if we pay them $75,000 a year, we're not going to, in the long term, attract the kind of candidates that we want to attract. And we need to, or we'll attract people who have other sources of income. Primarily, they'll be retired or rich. And that's who we would get for candidates, especially at the commissioner level. So I'm trying hard to carefully select my words so that I'm not accused of advocating for a ballot measure, but I'm advocating for a salary administration structure for elected officials that pays a professional wage to professional people. Try to get off my soapbox. And I'm going to change the subject for just a second. In addition, at the meeting on Tuesday of the Salary Committee, we were informed, we being the committee, and just by the way, the members of that committee are the 3 lay members, April Sevick, Matt Stevenson, and myself. We are volunteers for the county. We are not paid. At that meeting, we were informed that the surveyor had taken an additional job, part-time, as the surveyor in Curry County. So we invited him to the table and we asked him some questions. He let us know that he'd been working in that position since June of last year, that he had a written agreement with Curry County on how to conduct his business in that role. And the committee, and told us that he was only doing that job on Saturdays and Sundays, and that was not interfering with his business as being surveyor of Jackson County. So the committee, though disappointed that there was not disclosure made to county leadership and or the electorate of his choice, made the decision to make no recommendations regarding any action in regards to this matter at this time. So I'll just pause for a second and see if there are any questions. Commissioners, you weren't at that meeting on Tuesday, and it was uncomfortable at times, as was today. But any questions? Okay, all right. Then Danny, I'm going to turn this over to you, and you can continue with the discussion on the salary administration plan. Sorry for my lapses.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, you should have before you a draft order that proposes, let's see, it's 76-24. This is generally what we pass each year, which is your setting of salaries for elected officials. I can cover, as I've covered this a lot of years, the process. I'm going to cover the order first, and then if you have questions about the process, I can cover that as well. But essentially here, whereas the Elected Official Salary Committee met April 16th to discuss elected official salaries for the fiscal year 24-25, and pursuant to ORS 204-126, the Elected Official Salary Committee recommended to the Budget Committee, which we're doing here for elected officials, salaries for elected officials for fiscal year 24-25, whereas during deliberations, which will happen today, hopefully by motion and vote, the Budget Committee will accept the salary, elected official salary recommendation for 24-25. Then the order actually sets the salaries. Essentially, as Chair Morris explained, those positions that would be eligible for a step would move up in a step, and those positions that aren't eligible wouldn't move. There was no issue with moving anyone through the steps, and I'll just tell you the reason why that is because we're going to have many new people that are going to take office when we would normally implement the steps, which is in January. We're going to have a new commissioner. We're going to have a new assessor. We're going to have a new district attorney. And there's also some others that are running for office, including the surveyor, the justice of the peace. I think that's it. They're already at the max step, so they wouldn't be eligible for a step increase. So steps really weren't an issue in this. The newly elected officials will come in at the entry step. What does change in the salary is the consideration of a COLA. That happens July 1st. That happens on the first full pay period in July, I should say, sorry. That happens for all collective bargaining units and non-bargaining units, including management and confidential employees, along with elected officials across the whole county. So there's no different date of when that is implemented. Just the measurement of the CPI for determining what it will be is different between all of those contracts. And as Chair Morris said, that's a negotiated task. So the proposal is a 4.6% adjustment. That's consistent with the COLA that Jackson County non-represented management and confidential employees will receive, assuming you adopt the budget. And for the DA, it only applies to the county stipend portion of the DA's salary. So you can see what those are. The assessor will move from $130,083.20 to $136,073.60. Clerk will move from $115,107.20 to $120,411.20. For commissioners, one commissioner position will move from $130,083.20 to $136,073. I heard mentioned to you in the public comment that was going to go up $12,000. I don't know where that came from. It's not. This is the only proposed increase for that position. And then the other two positions would go from $143,416 to $159.60. The district attorney stipend will go from $39,624 to $41,433.60. The justice of the peace will go from $100,401.60 to $105,019.20. The sheriff will go from $167,835.20 to $175,552. And the surveyor will go from $129.52 to $126,505.60. And as I said, that's the first full pay period in July. Moving on, then for the step increases, I pretty much already explained that. Moving to a new assessor, it will actually drop the salary from $136,073.60 to $117,561.60. The clerk will stay at what I just mentioned previously, the $124,1120. Dave's position will, sorry, I guess I shouldn't say Dave specifically, but one commissioner position will drop from $136,073.60 to $117,561.60. And the other two commissioners aren't eligible for step increases, so it stays, as I mentioned before, with the COLA at $150,009.60. The district attorney stipend, we should see a new district attorney elected. That will drop from $41,433.60 to $32,468.80. Justice of the peace, as I said, at the top step, so also with the previous COLA, $105,019.20. Sheriff, also already at the top step, so same thing with the COLA, $175,552. And the surveyor is also at the top step, so with the COLA, $126,505.60. The rest of the order just talks about what happens under certain circumstances if a new person's elected. I'm not going to go through each of those because you can read them unless you have a specific question about them. One of the things I do want to point out is that as we were going over the salaries, and because there's a lot of attention made to county commissioners, stated multiple times out in the public that our commissioners make more than any other commissioners in our state or maybe in the country, and also more than the governor. Did explain to the Salary Review Committee all of the comparables, with the exception, I believe, of Lane County, who doesn't include a COLA. So once they include their COLA, it probably will be the same, but all make more than the governor. That's not one of the criteria in law, but because that's a community concern and been referenced many times. The other thing I do want to point out is in prior years, when we've done the salary comparisons, we've just looked at base salary to base salary. Our salary plan is very transparent with a step plan. You know what's included in the pay. Each step, everyone knows what to expect. In prior years, we've footnoted exceptions with salaries in other counties with all elected officials. But specifically with commissioners this year, to the extent we could, for example, Clackamas County pays a deferred comp contribution on top of salary. They also pay longevity pay. They also pay additional pay for the person who serves as the chair for the year. And actually, when you include all of those pays and you average that salary as of the January 25 pay, Clackamas County commissioners on average make more than our county commissioners on average. So on average, because we have this entry level and top level, when you average those together as compared to Clackamas County, our commissioners are actually paid less on average than Clackamas County. While we do have certain commissioners who make more, we have commissioners that also make less. But the average for pay is actually not the highest in the state. The other counties that we compare to are fairly similar in pay. The The overall average is about 117,000, if I remember correctly, but there's one that skews that pretty low, which is Lane County, which I think is under the 90,000 mark without a COLA adjustment. So if, you know, there is one that's way down there, and there's Clackamas who's way up there, and we fall in between those. The other thing is, in past years when we've looked at comparables, we have not had other counties' COLA adjustments, so we put our COLA adjustment in because we know it, and then the other counties' COLA adjustments aren't there, so it creates what appears to be a wider spread in salaries. For this year, we were able to find out a couple of those and include them in the comparables, and where we couldn't, we footnoted that as well. So when I talk about those comparables being under, many of those don't have the COLA that we're providing in our proposal that is accounted for. So once they get those, there'll be less margin between the pays between those counties that we're providing to you for comparables. And one other thing that we found across a lot of the counties that we didn't used to include in the salary, which is similar to a STEP, the purpose of a STEP plan is that some of the other counties pay what's called longevity pay. So once you're there a certain number of years, you get an additional percentage of pay or an additional dollar amount of pay. In our case, as I said, it's very transparent. You build pay as an elected official over the 6 steps. That's the same as our confidential and management employee pay plan. In other counties, that's not obvious and out front because it's a secondary mechanism of pay that's not included in the base salary, but is compensation to those elected officials. And the primary things we found, I mentioned deferred comp, longevity pay, some pay an additional premium if you serve as the chair. And so we tried to include those this year in that evaluation to the extent we could. Many of the counties, which is kind of amazing to me, but several of the counties still haven't set a proposed COLA adjustment for their elected officials. So I think they don't include that in their budgeting process like we do in anticipation because we have a professional pay plan, we know what we can budget and expect as we move forward, and it allows us to budget and pay for it. And I'll just remind you that primarily each department's different, each elected office is different, but when it comes to the commissioners, they're essentially an overhead department, so their costs are charged out across all funds. So there was mention today about taking commissioner pay and putting it into animal control. Since a lot of the commissioners' portion of their pay comes from dedicated funds, even if you chose to cut the pay, those funds can't go to animal control. They have to stay in the dedicated fund. So I just want to point that out since that was one of the comments made. It's a kind of government finance issue that a lot of people don't necessarily understand. You know, I mean, if we could, I would say, let's just take all the money from the airport and the road fund and Health and Human Services and spend it however we want. That would be great, but we're not allowed to do that. So that's the bulk of the explanation, unless you have some specific questions or anything any of you wanted me to cover.
Danny, remind me again, last year over the last 2 years, what have been the COLAs? I think I have in my brain, but I don't.
I couldn't remind you. I do remember that the actual annual CPI with these huge increases of inflation, we couldn't afford to pay it. So I think the most we've paid is 5%. Did we pay 5% last year? Do you remember? I think last year was 5%, but that's been the highest. And I think the actual CPI was somewhere in the 8%. And what that does to us out in the market is that, you know, we have to, at some point, we have to catch those things up. I mean, we can get by for a year or 2 years or maybe 5 years, but that spread becomes more and more by percentage pay increases over time. And so we end up having to figure out how to compete.
Could you kind of briefly go over ORS 204.112? It was alluded to that did not dictate, or that did not really inform the decision of the Salary Review Committee. There is obviously a lot to it, and it does say shall. Now, it doesn't tell you exactly what number you need to arrive at, but it does tell you that there is a certain criteria that you must follow. So could you kind of go over that and maybe clarify that, again, there is some required aspects to following 204.112 for the Salary Review Committee?
Well, so I don't know that I disagree per se with the statement that was made. I assume that something's put into law is meant to be considered. and it says that you shall annually review and consider these factors. But I don't disagree that, I suppose you could consider them and decide you don't care, you could do whatever you want. I mean, the truth is, the salary review committee could say, you know, we're paying every elected official $50,000, and just, I mean, the way the law is, you could do that. I don't think that makes sense, and I think the law, you know, prescribed the basis for what you should consider. Now, it didn't say once you consider those that you have to like enforce that. So I don't know that there's necessarily an enforcement mechanism, but you know, there is case law. Well, there's laws that maybe not directly apply to our county because they didn't go through the appellate court, although there is some basis of case law also that did go through the appellate as a basis for the rulings in those cases that didn't go through the appellate. So the truth is, I mean, there's at least somewhere out there where the courts have said state law is applicable and you can't just arbitrarily, you know, decide there's going to be a limit on salary.
And when it prescribes a certain type of comparables, and it may be shown that you clearly did not follow that those guidelines and those comparables, then I believe you can be shown to be, again, in violation of an Oregon statute.
Yeah, I'm not an attorney, so I don't know if I'm comfortable answering that. I can probably ask Joel to answer that if you want, but it does say the board shall take into account such factors as. It is true it doesn't necessarily limit it to those factors, but it does say you shall take them into account. So, I mean, that's the best I'm going to do. Commissioner Dyer,
yeah,
I know you did go to law school, but I didn't. So.
There's so many gray areas in those recommendations or laws or whatever we want to call them, or requirements, that I was uncomfortable enough at the very beginning that I needed to have, I felt we all needed to have, a document that was transparent and predictable, that the electorate could look at and say, oh, 3 years down the road, this is what it's going to look like. And so that it isn't about that Craig is going to decide how much Colleen makes next year, you know, that it's a salary administration plan that is managed by the committee and recommended to the Board of Commissioners for final approval through the Budget Committee. So it's all about this arbitrariness in these gray areas, and if we can put things down in writing, and again, the whole issue of professional pay for professional responsibility. Sorry, I'm beating the drum again, but I feel strongly on this subject. It's worked. You know, the first couple of years, we would finish this process, and then we would wait for the newspaper to come out to see all the criticisms about how much the commissioners were making, okay? And with the salary administration plan, that kind of went away. And for years, we haven't had that kind of pushback from the community until this year, and that's fine. The community should voice their opinions and their concerns. But I still feel like the salary administration plan is the proper and correct and ethical way to go. Yes, I am ready for comments, yeah.
Do you want me to stay here, or can I move?
No, I just have comments. I don't have questions.
Go right ahead.
Because I'm listed in their comments. So, it was commented this was labeled as a failed experiment. And I don't think it was an experiment. It was a formula that was established in 2007 or 2008. And yes, I was here testifying then, objecting to, and it was contentious. And I did object to it, quoted in there. They agreed with me that, and I didn't take the full salary for my first 4 years. I campaigned on that. I said, I'll take the 2008 salary for 4 years, of which I did. I took the, it wasn't 75,000, it was 68 something. And I put my money where my mouth was. And so And if someone runs and wants to take 75, any elected official can take any amount, or no retirement, no insurance. You can do whatever you like, and you sign it. But still, the county budgets the full thing, because elected people, I guess, can be fickle. They can change the next day and say, no, I want it. But I kept my word, as I would, and I did my 4 years at that salary. And but it's true, as Mr. Jordan said, the money doesn't go back to the general fund to go to do a capital project or anything else you think you want. You think it should. It goes back in chargebacks. And so it doesn't accomplish anything greater, as I had hoped. And so when I ran for reelection, which don't know that I ever planned I would, I said, if I run for reelection, I'm taking my full salary. And I have, and except for during COVID, and we passed a COLA, and I said, are you kidding me? Why would I take a COLA increase when businesses are closing? And I didn't take my COLA. So I did go back on my word. I didn't take my full salary. I didn't take the COLA. But so, I guess I run a lot on convictions. And as elected officials, we have that right, as any elected official running can do. But I do appreciate for the elected official salary committee that it does provide, and for the public, it provides a professional, transparent, established formula. I don't call it an experiment, and it does provide a professional pay for an executive office, not just for commissioners, but for all elected people in Jackson County. And so I respect that. It is a good salary, and I appreciate it. Appreciate the salary, I know, for myself, and I'm sure all the elected officials do. And I think, I am disappointed when I saw our surveyor, who makes 3 times the salary of any citizen in our committee, not respect our chair in saying sit down. And I think that was very disrespectful, and apologize for that. I think that is not deserving when you are trying to run the meeting. And I made note of that, and I think that was not respectful. And but I just wanted to comment that it has been a contentious salary issue for me. So, but I do approve of what you have established, what was established by the committee.
Anyone else? Yeah, Matt?
I have a few things to say as well. First of all, I'd like to commend you, Mr. Chair, for the way that you have conducted yourself through this process, because it has been contentious. And I think there's been some mischaracterization, specifically of how the meeting on Tuesday went. I thought that you handled that very well, and I do not feel like there was any personal attacks made. I feel like there was questions, which were extremely appropriate. Furthermore, I want to voice my support, and specifically on how this process is set up. I completely agree with the notion that we need to have elected officials in positions of salary positions that are of a professional nature, to attract people into those positions. And furthermore, and Colleen mentioned this as well, to have something that is established so that the people can plan. And so that, to go into a 4-year position not knowing what your salary is going to be in 2 years, and whether it may be slashed in half, that is not the way we want to position the county to attract the right type of candidates for these positions. I think that this process is well established. It has been successful in its administration, and I agree with what is being presented. As you can tell, probably strongly agree with what's being presented. And I'll leave it for that now.
Anyone else?
Why not? I was sitting here making notes and thinking to myself of all the organizations I've been involved in. I've come to really respect the county. The county employees are loyal, they're dedicated, they do their work to the best of their ability, it appears to me. I look at the leadership that the commissioners provide. And I really do believe that their leadership has been great, that you three have done a good job. You've tried to do what is best for the community, even though there have been people who object. And then I look at our administrator, Danny Jordan, and Danny, you have the skill and the fiscal prudence, which I greatly respect. I look around at the federal government, the state government, and other counties. This county, in my opinion, does a better job for us taxpayers than any of the rest of them.
Go ahead.
I forgot to mention one thing. Just, I've been, it's hard to believe, in over 10 years in office. And until now, nobody has questioned the salaries except me. So, it seems a little bit agenda-driven. And so, I just think that that's kind of crazy. But I do agree with April when she says that our budget is just always amazingly put together. And Danny, as our administrator, does a fabulous job. And the fact that even his budgeting numbers are being questioned, I'm going, who would dare question his capabilities, the awards given? And I will tell you, coming into office, didn't have that knowledge or awareness of his capabilities. I've come to really respect his job he does as our county administrator as well. So appreciate the ability to air that as well. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
You ready for a motion?
No.
Okay.
I had one thing. It's not about, I just want to tell you, Shannon just forwarded to me an order that was passed by Lane County. So I told you Lane County was kind of the outlier low. Their salary was at $87,869. They passed themselves a 26 or 27% increase in October, and their salaries are now $114,026. So the average is going to bump way up. Our salaries are not, tremendously or even minutely out of line in that range of salaries. We're not at the top and we're not at the bottom. Which I think is a good place to be.
I would also point out they have 5 commissioners.
They have 5.
Didn't know that.
I guess one more thing, just to again, talk about the purpose and the function of this, of our salary administration plan and of RS 204.112, that again will base salaries on objective criteria and not political motivation, not agendas. And the what shed a little light, I think, is there's objections made. Every elected official in this county, their salaries are determined by the same process and criteria, but the only ones that are being questioned are commissioners. And it's generally, I'm going to say this, by people who seem to have some political differences. They've made them very clear. So again, the best way to attract the type of expertise, experience, and educated people in these positions you need is a good, objectively based criteria process, and not something that blows in the political winds.
Agreed. All right. Last chance.
Well, and we're just so I'm clear on the agenda here, we're only talking about this particular piece, right? We'll be in deliberations for the whole
Yes.
budget later. Yeah, because I've got some other comments I'd like to make. Yeah, but,
Right.
yep.
Okay. All right. All right. We are going to move to public comment. Do we have anybody here who would like to make public comment?
Did we need to approve
Okay.
anything on the?
I will read the rules for public comment. Only the chairperson or a member of the Budget Committee may question a speaker. There will be no interruption of a speaker from the audience and no debates on the floor. Applause is not permitted. A speaker may criticize or support a proposal, but the speaker shall not argue with another speaker directly. A person wishing to speak shall sign in or raise his or her hand and wait to be recognized by the chairperson. After being recognized, the speaker shall state his or her name and address before proceeding with his or her statement. The duration of any comment is limited to 5 minutes and should cover factual information relevant to the budget proposal at issue. And I want to emphasize that any comments that are made need to be specific to the budget. And the chair is not going to find acceptable digression into areas that are not specific, in my opinion, to the budget. And then lastly, repetition by a speaker shall be avoided. So with that, Scott, please come forward, state your name and address, and we'll set the timer for 5 minutes.
Scott Fine, as you all know, I am county surveyor. I reside at 600 Tyler Creek Road in Ashland, Oregon. Chair Morris, I am terribly sorry if I offended you in some way. As all of you can tell, I am deeply passionate about being the county surveyor and have dedicated my life to it. And this process, relative to how we set elected officials' salary, I have tremendous respect for Commissioner Roberts. I was there present at a number of her campaign functions. Commissioner Roberts is the only person that has ever really pushed on this issue and frankly really stood up for the distinction of elected officials in this community on an ongoing basis. Commissioner Dotter has, Commissioner Dyer has, but Commissioner Roberts, you've just been a standout for years in this community of the democratic process. And that's what makes this country a great community, great place, and unlike any other place in the world. And it's something that we cannot lose. And so, as a citizen, as an elected official, just this process, and how things get handled and the things that are allowed to enter into it from various sources, and even on the public record at the Elected Officials Salary Review Committee meeting, County Council had to remind the committee repeatedly what their authority is limited to, despite their multiple attempts to stray, and that it was limited to setting the salaries as recommended or having some other deliberation. But instead, it moved into being called unethical, being told that I have to disclose things that I do in my personal life, which are all disclosed in accordance with law on the Oregon Government Ethics Commission filings as sources of income as an elected official. I have never, ever tried to conceal anything from the Board of Commissioners, our citizens, our county administration. And the ability to erode the electorate who elected officials are accountable to in the form of manipulation of information to leverage desired outcomes, which can ultimately hit people on their personal pocketbook, which I'm like everybody else. I have 2 young children. I have a 7-year-old, I have a 10-year-old. I choose to do this. I choose to be in this community. I care about this place. Whether it's me or anybody else, if we allow these things to enter in the process, we are in full subversion of democracy. We are not representing our voters. And if I have come across strongly as a person, as a citizen, as an elected official, it's for that reason. Because the work of elected officials speaks for themselves. People have the right to vote. And when you see elected officials being unopposed for years, multiple terms, such as myself, just as in this May primary coming up, it is from a county-wide recognition of expertise and professionalism and service. And to drill in on the fact that I work as a county surveyor part-time for another county, and for the first time to be supposedly asked to attend these meetings, and then to see the meeting stray and be manipulated, only to be put back forth on course by Joel Benton, our county council, who Joel and I have had our differences over the years, but he is a person of ethics, which is why he understands the law, which is why he pointed you back that way. And I just hope that we can all learn from this, move forward as an organization, as professionals, and that we remember this moment and that we never go down this road again, because none of us elected officials have to enter time here or are eligible for unemployment or vacation. We are fundamentally different than appointed members that work for the county. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scared me.
So we can take a break if anyone needs it, or we can just push on. What are your feelings?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I wasn't aware of that. So why don't we break then and have something to eat? Yeah. Yeah, okay. I'll recess us until, how about, can we manage this by 1 o'clock?
Sure.
Yeah, all right. We'll be back at 1 o'clock.